You'll be okay. Just take your time.
Hello, wonderful person, this is Anton, and today we're going to discuss a story that was going viral in regards to one of the biggest medical breakthroughs. The super exciting story about the research on Huntington's disease, one of the most devastating and relentless neurodegenerative disorders that, despite being rare, is basically deadly. And for decades, a lot of families facing this inherited fatal condition, in essence, had no effective way to slow the progression, unfortunately watching their loved ones slowly become sicker and sicker. But this recent press announcement and this recent study suddenly created a lot of buzz. A small public Dutch company known as Unicure, that by the way is listed on the Nasdaq, and this will be very important in a few minutes, announced first results from a clinical trial claiming a groundbreaking success, with this claim actually being quite significant. Here, a single dose of a gene therapy appeared to slow the progression of disease by astounding 75% in a specific patient group for at least 3 years. And that by itself is quite an achievement. But because on this channel I generally don't really follow the hype trend and try to focus on the science and the specifics, well, here we have quite a lot to discuss. And I guess let's maybe start with the obvious. As always, when dealing with any kind of a medical breakthrough, especially the ones announced by public companies, we must be very careful to filter out any hype and focus specifically on documented scientific facts. Because as you can see from this chart, as soon as this announcement was made, the stock increased by something like almost 500%. And while these findings do offer us hope, it's also important to remember that these are super early results and they seem to come from a very small group of patients. So we don't yet have a rigorous process and, much more importantly, any kind of a peer review. As a matter of fact, the results themselves are also extremely limited and, well, really, this is not a scientific study at all. This, as the name implies, is still a very early trial. But let's actually also talk about how Huntington's affects people and why, if this is actually true, this would be a groundbreaking achievement. And so here we have to understand why a 75% slowing of progression of Huntington's is such a huge deal. We basically have to first understand how brutally it can affect a person's brain. And, well, unfortunately, Huntington's is an inherited condition. It's basically a genetic disorder. And it involves a very specific gene. And because of this gene, certain neurons start to malfunction and die, producing very similar effects to dementia, Parkinson's disease, and motor neuron disease. And unfortunately for people affected by this, symptoms start to occur around the age of 30 to 40. They are often right in the prime of their working lives. And once these symptoms start, the condition progressively injures and kills a lot of neurons, starting with the neurons controlling our moods, our thinking, and our movement. And so within just a few years, the patient can lose the ability to work, to live independently, and to even think. And after about 10 to sometimes 25 years, these symptoms result in death. And so here, because of this disorder, there's a kind of a triad of issues that the patients usually have to face. We have the motor symptoms, which unfortunately involves involuntary jerky-like, dance-like movements, sometimes referred to as chorea. No, not the K-pop Korea. Here we're talking about the Korea spelled this way, originally described by George Huntington, who discovered this disorder. Then we have the cognitive decline, very similar to dementia, and psychiatric symptoms, including depression, irritability, and mood swings. And today we know that all of this seems to be the result of just one single gene, a gene referred to as HTT. And this gene usually provides instructions for making the Huntington protein, something that's found throughout the body, but is usually most abundant in the brain. And so every person, including you and I, contains a section within the gene where 3 DNA letters, CAG, are repeated multiple times. And in a healthy person, the sequence repeat maybe 10 to maximum 35 times. But in people with the Huntington's, this repetition for some reason becomes extreme, appearing up to 120 times in some of the more extreme examples. And it's really this unusual excessive repetition that then results in the cells creating versions of the Huntington protein that's just way too long. And that's because, as you probably know, when it comes to protein creation, it's the transcription of these genes that then forms the protein itself, that then has to fold in a certain way. And so for this protein, when it contains too many of these CAG repetitions, instead of becoming folded in just the right way, it actually ends up breaking down into much smaller fragments. And so even though the normal protein looks something like this, the abnormal version instead starts to fall apart, creating individual components that then unfortunately become toxic. And it's these toxic fragments that then end up accumulating inside the brain cells, which eventually starts to kill cells one by one. And the only reason this mutation even still exists, despite being so deadly, is first of all because it generally appears much later in life, so after people already had kids, and second of all because this mutation unfortunately seems to be dominant. And so basically here, there's always a 50% chance that a child is also going to inherit this if at least one of the parents is a carrier. And well, to date, since this was originally discovered, there was really no treatment, and instead the focus was on trying to manage symptoms, specifically depression and the problem with chorea or movements. And so far, none of the previous treatments was able to affect the proteins themselves. And this is why this recent trial is sort of kind of exciting. Here it involved a gene therapy referred to as ANT-130. Don't ask me why it's called that, but I guess that's just the name. With the goal of ANT-130 being really simple, reducing the levels of the toxic mutant Huntington protein permanently.
When you're in Navy medicine, you see more than numbers on a chart. Behind every checkup, every set of vitals, is a service member who needs you.
And in this case, the therapy would work using a cutting-edge genetic medicine, specifically gene silencing, involving 3 individual steps. First, there's a delivery system. Here, the therapy is delivered inside a harmless virus, which acts basically kind of like a delivery truck. So basically, these are genetically modified viruses whose job is to just deliver very specific genes. But in order for this virus to even get inside the brain, it actually does require a neurological surgery. Here, the brain requires a complex, delicate, one-time neurosurgical procedure where the doctors have to use MRI to guide tiny catheters directly into certain critical brain regions that are usually heavily damaged by the Huntingtons. The 2 specific regions are usually putamen, that's visible in red, and caudate nucleus, also in red. And once all this is delivered through this injection, this is where the gene silencing begins. And so here this virus, that's normally responsible for infecting the cells, instead injects this new genetic code into the brain cells with this new code containing very specific instructions. The instructions to produce a new microRNA. With this microRNA then interacting with messenger RNAs that would have been used to construct the Huntington protein. So basically,
I'm
the
trying to
microRNA
understand what Anton
intercepts
is
these
telling
instructions,
us
effectively shutting down the production of the protein before it becomes possible. And though this shuts down both the healthy and the toxic mutant versions, this does not seem to affect the cell in a negative way as much, mostly because it's really the toxic fragments that usually result in the cell destruction. So yeah, this is a super complex procedure involving some ridiculously complex genetics and neurosurgery.
Yeah, I gotta
which is actually
mod
why
this
right now the
somehow
cost for
where
this
I had
procedure
the
is approximately
podcast in the
$80 million.
vehicles.
Yeah, that's
Or
quite a
like,
lot.
you know,
But if it does pass the
in-game,
trial and if FDA approves this,
if I
the
could
prices
control
might
the
go down to about
podcast
maybe
in-game, this
1.7
would
million,
help a lot.
which
Like
is still
like
quite
the
a lot.
radio.
But
Like,
importantly, this only has to be done
so I
once,
wouldn't have to sit
since
here
the
waiting
brain
to run a
cells are not
mission.
replaced in the same way as
Like, do
skin
I just
cells
run
or
the
blood
mission and
cells.
let the
Here, a
podcast
single
well, then
dose
I can
is
only have
expected to last
here,
for a
but then I have
life,
to
essentially
exit. You know, I
offering a
gotta switch
permanent
to other
protection.
screen,
And here I
pause
also
it,
wanted to
turn it back
mention one more
on.
thing that is not really
Hey,
mentioned in some of the press releases. This is not just something that came out
go
of nowhere,
outside the game.
and this
I
has
have to go
been in
outside the
development
game
for
to
over
control
10
the
years. As a
radio.
matter of fact, there are actual studies from 10 years ago on this specific messenger RNA that was supposed to target
Now, if I
Huntington
had a
proteins, and
dual
that already
screen
showed a
set
lot
up
of
in here,
promise even back then. And so these initial trials produced quite a lot of promising results, but it was just not good enough yet. Mostly because of various risks associated with the gene therapies and, of course, brain surgery. But it was really this recent 2025 data
I
that
forgot
suddenly
who
changed
Torino
FDA's
was.
mind and became a sudden sensation. And that's because this trial showed that the disease was suddenly slowed down by at least 75%. And so the initial 2016 trial was basically the start of this, but was mostly based on a lot of theoretical predictions. And now we seem to have actual physical proof. But let's, I guess, talk about why this is still maybe a little bit early as well. This trial involved 29 patients, but the crucial findings that the report is based on involve the group that received the higher dose of AMT-130, where 12 patients were followed for 3 years directly. And so according to the report from uniQure, patients that were given the high dose showed a statistically significant 75% less disease progression compared to the external group. And here this measure that's referred to as Unified Huntington's Disease Rating Scale, which usually combines the measures of thinking, motor function, and ability to manage daily life,
I remember
showed
this
scores that were much higher than anyone else. And so here, the high-dose group also demonstrated 60% slowing in the total functional
I didn't know
capacity.
all that was going to go
And so all
down.
of these numbers were very impressive. Additionally, they also looked at crucial biomarkers in the spinal fluid, referred to as NfLs, neurofilament-like proteins. Usually, high NFL levels indicate neuronal damage, which in Huntington's disease is usually extremely high. And normally, the protein level here would spike as the disease progresses. But in the trial, the treated patients showed a dramatic decline of NFL levels, which basically implied a reduced neuronal damage and suggested that the actual treatment would work. And so here, the results were sort of unprecedented. And so here, all of these 12 patients were stable over time, which was very unusual for anyone with Huntington's. And what's even more shocking is that at least one of these patients was even able to return to work. But once again,
Where'd the
very
rocket launcher?
important
Where'd it go?
caution
Where'd it
here.
go?
This is just from 12
Where's it
patients,
at?
and also just at 3-year mark, and specifically with the very high dose group. So right now we just cannot draw any
Okay, I gotta
conclusions
chase
yet, mostly because the group is just a little bit too small. Second of all, the comparison in this case may have been a little bit biased. The treated patients were not compared to a simultaneous placebo group, but instead were compared to external match control group from a much larger long-term observational study referred to as Enroll-HD. This is a very well-known clinical research study based on many different families that struggle with Huntington's disease. And while this method might be necessary for complex trials, compared to obviously internal study with your own patients and your own placebo, may introduce bias and thus makes data just a little bit less robust. Here, for a very good medical study, you would require a randomized, blinded, and placebo-controlled trial in order to make these results much more complete. But I guess, third of all, we have to go back to that public company situation. Here, findings were announced by uniQure in a press release. And as a small public company with an actual stock, a lot of these positive announcements often affect investor confidence. And as I showed you before, obviously, stock prices. And so while data is promising, it needs to still be fully published, it has to be peer-reviewed and scrutinized, and much more importantly, it has to be replicated by someone else. And so until that's done, and until we have actual studies by other teams, we're not going to know if this is really working or not. But here we have this other extra segment that we have to discuss. Even if it does work, and if it gets approved, there is still a major barrier to access just because of the complexity and the prices. Here the treatment involves complex neurosurgery and very expensive gene therapies that are only going to be affordable to someone that's already well off. And so here the FDA and a lot of regulators are going to have to face this somewhat difficult choice. Here they have to decide if they want to allow early access based on these promising but limited results, even though the cost of this is going to be ridiculously high. Nevertheless, despite all of this is still a historic discovery. Because here, even from back in school, I remember how everyone was always talking about Huntington's as potentially never really having any cure. Yet here, for the first time ever, we have this early data that provides convincing signs that a very specific gene therapy may actually work after all, which would make it the first ever genetic neurodegenerative disorder to have been treated successfully through this very complex procedure. And that, of course, means that one day, assuming this, of course, works, and assuming it becomes a little bit cheaper, we may also find other cures for things like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. But for uniQure, it's definitely some good news. Now, I mean, I still wouldn't really buy their stock anymore because it's already overinflated.
They're too hard. You know, like sometimes they have to help you. They cheat to help you.
FDA, which means that
you know what I mean? Like you're like, yeah, I suck.
With the company potentially applying for approval
like you can tell when it's giving
sometimes in 2026. And so for any family that's affected by Huntington's disease, this is maybe great news. Here we may be witnessing the first credible step towards slowing inherited diseases. But once again, we still have to remain cautious and wait for additional trials
Quite
and
like
to better
brains.
studies.
I'm
And
My
honestly,
hands aren't
progress in
doing
this
what
field
I want
would
them
not be
to.
even possible if it was not for bravery of patients who specifically volunteered for this complex surgery, knowing that it could be
And yeah,
super
if it was
dangerous.
playing by the
So
rules
this
like
is
we
definitely
did,
quite a story,
I'm pretty sure.
and I'm sure we'll hear more in the next few years. And so once we have some additional discoveries and something else to talk about when it comes to Huntington's, especially when it comes to this particular trial, we'll definitely come back and discuss this in some of the future videos. Until then, thank you for watching, subscribe, come back tomorrow to
This
learn something
keyboard's
else.
giving me
Check out the
carpal
channel
tunnel
Patreon where you
though.
can find additional videos without any ads and can DM me directly, or by joining the channel membership that grants you early access and a few more additional videos. Alternatively, you can also buy the Wonderful Person t-shirt in the description. Stay wonderful, I'll see you tomorrow, and as always, bye-bye.
Just going to show us love.
Oh,
Hey, soul spenders are bad. Yeah, you know, but shit like...
So angry. You know you're at home.
Wherever you go, whatever they get into.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Sometimes when I do videos, like as I'm finishing up putting the title on there, like I know like this one's, like people are just gonna hate this take, and that is fine. I kind of, one thing I dislike about YouTube and kind of how conversations and how things happen these days is that people are nervous to give just their
wasn't
honest
ready for
take
that.
on things when they know it's going to be unpopular. You know, you can, there's plenty of things that people like or are interested in or dislike or whatever else.
Yeah,
You know,
that's where I'm
I don't
going.
like Harry Styles. For this audience, I think I'm pretty safe in saying that. But, you know, in other places, like that's heresy. I mean, how could you not? You know, I'm not a big fan of Taylor Swift either. I know. I'm definitely, there's lots of people listening right now that are just completely outraged because I know my audience really well and they would be upset by such comments. But anyway, I just find a lot of people like pull back, and where comics are concerned, you know, I mean, I used to have good conversations in the shop with customers who didn't like things that many considered classics. For whatever reason, I mean, and there's lots of different examples, but the one that sticks in my head is because I can picture the guy now. I had a guy who really disliked Batman the Killing Joke. And,
That's cute.
you know, if we talk about kind of 2015 and on, the last 10 years, basically. And
Yeah.
by the way, I know that date, a lot of people associate various things happening around that date, but I'm just talking like in the last 10 years. More people have started to dislike the Killing Joke. But for a while, for like 20 years, that was the Bible. That was literally like art perfect, story perfect, Batman take perfect, Joker take perfect.
Not right now.
Like
I gotta
that,
check
you know,
into some shit.
it's if you're like shaking your head like, oh, that surprises me. If you were around around in the kind of late 80s, early 90s. That was...
I gotta re-up.
Man, when did that come out? That was a late 80s book, I think, or 80s book.
I think I'm...
Anyway, I may be way off. Yeah, I checked. 1988. That was going to bother me. I have memories of it. But anyway, the late 80s and early 90s, that was a God-level book.
Going back to my old neighborhood, too.
You know, but this guy comes in, and he's like, he didn't like it.
Weapons.
He's like, I didn't like how, the Gordon was kind of an idiot. I didn't like what they did to Barbara. They built her up as kind of being good at things.
Well, I'm not going to buy
it. This moron who's taken out pretty easily.
I got to go find game.
And then this whole thing about Batman, having this kind of camaraderie with Joker, sort of, in the end. I mean, just hated the book. And, it was meant to be deeper. I remember the guy's like, I don't care if it's meant to be deeper. It's a stupid book. And that was his take. And over the years, I've heard people say the same thing about, like, Claremont's X-Men run, about Byrne's Fantastic Four run, about Watchmen, about George Perez. I mean, and Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby's maybe the easiest one because in the, again, late 80s, kind of early 90s, when he had the speculator boom, and the artists that everybody really loved were the Todd McFarlanes, the Jim Lees, and, people like that. And Kirby's art was, very different stylistically. And there were people who just hated Kirby's art, and Ditko's art, and Romita Sr.'s art, and a lot of the classic, artists. I remember when the George Perez, Kurt Busiek Avengers came out, there were people who were like, ugh, I hate this old art. Like, it's old man, old-fashioned art on that book. I love that book. This isn't me trying to put myself on the right side of history. It's just that book was beautiful. And the amount of complexity and detail. I mean, that was always the thing. There's lots of reasons to love George Perez. But the amount he packed on a page, I mean, good God. I always loved that. And for what it's worth, I feel the same way in a lot of cases with where Brett Booth's art has gone. And I know he comments on this channel regularly, and I think Booth is a great guy. So I'm not this isn't me just flinging praise the guy who comes onto the channel, but there's something about the complexity of what he does that, especially when he was doing the work on the Flash and everything else, and the Spawn work. I think there's a level of kind of investment into the panel that you just don't see a lot anymore in comics, but you definitely saw it with Perez and a handful of others. It's probably why originally I liked Art Adams a lot too, because there was a lot of that kind of deep level care put into every panel. Anyway, but there are people who came in and just George Perez to them was old man art.
Experian is your big financial friend, helping you explore credit card offers with confidence. Some cards are labeled no ding decline, which means if you're not approved, they won't hurt your credit score.
Yeah, why are we doing this? Yeah.
All I guess I could say is people were more comfortable giving those kinds of takes. And it feels like we've lost a little bit of that in comics, where there was a little bit more... Well, you know what? I'm going to say it this way. We need more diversity in the fandom of comics, because now things tend to be fairly binary. You either love it, or you hate it and comics are trash. And there's very little kind of in between. And I'm not talking people who are like, this comic is a meh. If you're doing this comic is meh, then for all intents and purposes, you're part of this comic is trash kind of comment. Because if it's truly kind of a middle of the road book, most people just don't comment on it at all. It's just, it's kind of some null. But I miss talking to people who would have kind of just very radically different takes from the rest of everyone else. And certainly it would lead to kind of heated debates in a comic shop. But it was different still. It was different. There wasn't like kind of this desire to go kill yourself, delete this. That you get today. The takes are, it's like the takes are sloppier and the responses to the takes are sloppier. It instead of like in any comic shop, there was another guy who was a regular who would be there all the time, and he was of course very opinionated, and his opinions generally fell with the mainstream or with popularity. And so if somebody would come in and say something like, The Killing Joke is a garbage book, I just hate the writing and everything about it. It's like, here, you're wrong. And here is my 50-point essay explaining why you are wrong. And, I guess at that time, I remember thinking, God, this guy is spending a lot of money with me, but he is annoying. But I'd take that annoying guy back any day now. I miss the, here's 500 points to refute your argument. When today we're left with just a picture of, just a meme of somebody shouting at a cat, and the cat's like, you're wrong, please delete yourself, spelled poorly. That's very much an old man shouts at clouds kind of comment I just made. But that, I think that was something beautiful about comics, because in other mediums, I didn't ever see that level of complexity. I mean, I'm sure it existed because of how people just talked around music and movies and other things. But comics, you had this rich depth to what people really loved and what they didn't, and people would love things kind of unashamedly. There were people who, there was another customer, and she loved Gru the Wanderer, and Gru was a fun title, but I'd be hard pressed to put it in the top 10 comics of all time. It's a good book. It's a fun book. And it went on for a very long time. I mean, it's funny you think about how quickly a lot of books are canceled today. And Gru, anybody know off the top of your head how many issues were in that kind of original Marvel epic run? I mean, I want to say that comic went for 50 plus issues, but maybe that's my memory playing tricks on me. But it's just, it's striking to me how you had people who loved things, and there was no shame in loving those things. You had people who hated those things, and so I guess my question is for you. Let's turn the clock back to a time where you didn't have the "I hate you, delete this" kind of response to things. And what's something that you just can't stand that the majority of people
Baby?
like?
Have we checked on Baby?
Okay, so, and I'll get it as an example, by the way. Nobody come in here I don't like Captain Marvel.
Rub it in a little.
Too much girl boss. No, that's not a good
too much
example. There's
girl
plenty of
boss.
people already bitching about that one. So I'm talking about, you know what? I see a lot of people excited about Absolute Batman. I think it sucks. Or, conversely, the internet lost their collective shit over Squirrel Girl. I read every issue. I actually enjoyed that comic. I thought the jokes were clever and humorous. I liked it. I'm curious what take, or, maybe something more in the past. Are you somebody who thinks, it's more fashionable to hate on Alan Moore these days, but are you somebody who thinks that Watchmen sucks or The Killing Joke? Are you somebody who thinks that Batman Year One was a huge mistake? That Daredevil Born Again is boring and did a lot of damage to the character. Are you where are you in the something you love, something you hate? Are you somebody who wants to come in and raise your hand and go, you know what, the Spider-Man Mary Jane marriage, that was dull. I'm glad they ended it. Nothing good was coming of that. Anyway, let me know in the comments below. And do you know kind of what I'm talking about, where there's just more tolerance for alternate views in comics? And I guess that's what I mean by comics needs more diversity in what people love and what people hate. And they need more acceptance than, hey, this person just loves it. And not for the masses. Again, there's plenty of people out there who are like, the Krakoa era is the best era, and there's never been any X-Men era like that. But, they in most cases, you discover that they've never read the comics or even the current comics. They're literally going off of panels from the Hellfire Gala that have been posted on Twitter, and that's it. But I'm talking to somebody who's a legit, reads comics, enjoys comics, has a take that's different. And what's your take? What's something you love or you hate that's completely different from the norm? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course. And thanks for listening.
1, 2, 3, bitches!
Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar. You probably heard today that Discord got hacked, and I'm here to set the misinformation straight. No, Discord has not been hacked. Kind of, actually. See, Discord is a huge platform, and they work with a lot of people that are, there to help Discord out with things like support and so on and so forth. So actually, it was one of Discord's partners that ended up getting hacked. And because they got hacked, a few of you guys out there that probably sent in your ID with a support ticket actually got it leaked. So how did this actually happen, ladies and gentlemen? Well, about 2 weeks ago, Discord got hacked. And they sent out this email to, anybody that could have been affected yesterday. So this email says, "Hello, we're reaching out to you because of a recent security incident on September 20th involving your personal data." Ooh, when you read that, things are not looking good. Specifically, an unauthorized party, hackers, gained limited access to a third-party customer service system used by Discord. We have confirmed that some of your personal data associated with your contact with our customer support or trust and safety teams were exposed in this incident. So who are those? What is that information? Well, your name, for instance, your Discord username, your email, other contact details, if you provided them. Limited payment information, and limited basically means your payment type, last 4 digits of your credit card, and the purchase history if associated with your account. So for somebody like me that probably paid Discord Nitro, and you filled out a support ticket with their trust and safety teams, wait until you figure out why these support tickets have to get written. Apparently, yeah, the last 4 digits are out there, which isn't the end of the world. But you also don't want that out. Your IP addresses, which really don't matter much in the grand scheme of things. Okay, don't relax. Messages and attachments sent to our customer support or trust and safety agents. So provided you didn't send anything super personal, yeah, they've got access to that shit. What it didn't include, thank God, was full credit card numbers or CCV codes, which are the 3 little magic numbers on the back that let your credit card be used. Thank God that didn't get leaked. God bless. Your physical address. Okay, we can breathe easy. Your messages or activity on Discord beyond what you discussed with customer support. So no, the group chat didn't get leaked because somebody had to talk to Discord's teams. Or thankfully your Discord password or authentication data. None of these things would have made any sense for it to be hacked. If they were hacked through a third party, then honestly, I think Discord should probably be fucking panned. We should all just switch over to TeamSpeak or anything else if any of those 4 bullet points got leaked because of this hack. So obviously, look, this is a pretty serious situation, and the reason why it's so serious is because a lot of this had to do with age verification. So for anybody that doesn't know, a lot of the internet now needs you to, age verify yourself. Everyone needs to know if you're over the age of 18 so you can access certain things on Discord, certain social media services. Because yes, we live in a world now where the government needs to baby every fucking thing we do on the internet because parents are just so fucking brain dead that they can't do this job themselves, okay? That's just the world we're in, okay? To sound pissed saying that, well, you haven't heard the half of it. But anyways, the thing about it is obviously what was hacked is apparently their Zendesk. Now, from what I understand, Zendesk is sort of the customer support tool that they use in order to detail out tickets, take care of tickets. In fact, it's used pretty much by a big bunch of organizations. Places like Shopify, places like Uber, places like Siemens, places like Tesco, for instance. There's a lot of places in here, and of course it makes it super easy for you to have conversations, makes it super easy for it being efficient, thankfully with all these AI tools that I'm pretty sure Zendesk has to make use of because they paid up the ass for it. And then of course you've also got the ability to close those tickets as quick as you can. In this case, they actually say it on their website. The unauthorized party also gained access to a small number of government ID images, example, your driver's licenses or your passports. Not small documents, by the way, okay? Because yes, driver's licenses do contain addresses in some cases, as do fucking passports. Fuck me. Actually, I don't know if the Canadian passport does, but I know my driver's license does. From users who had to appeal an age determination. If your ID may have been accessed, that will be specified in the email you received. So let's say you let's say that Discord decided to, their fucking AI was acting up and they're like, hold on, wait a minute, we think you're a little kid, we think you're a minor, you're gonna have to give us an ID, right? And again, obviously Discord is legally required to do this. I'm pretty sure no organization wants to go through the liability, which we'll get to. But yeah, they're supposed to ask you for your ID, right? So you give them your ID because, you know, otherwise you can't access your Discord account and talk with your friends or join your fucking, you know, groups or whatever. So you're like, okay, let me go to the trust and safety team. Let me give them my ID, right? It's similar to how any of these social media platforms ask you. And to my knowledge, my understanding, aside from Google and YouTube, because at the end of the day, I have a financial relationship with the site, I don't provide my ID pretty much to anybody. Like Facebook, specifically Instagram, has banned my original account for impersonation of, I guess, a public figure, and decided to fucking ban me, okay? An account that I had, I think, before I even started YouTube videos. So anyways, they banned my account, okay? And they were like, hey, give us an ID and then we'll reopen it. And I'm like, no, Mark, I'm not giving you my fucking ID. So ultimately, Discord did the same thing, and users were like, okay, sure, here's my identification, let me get access. Now, if you filled out a support ticket, that ID that you gave, that ticket, could potentially be leaked. So meaning that in the age of ID verification, basically the worst nightmares happen. And this is why I'm making a video about it, because I said this way before these laws were even passed, or even thought of, right? And ultimately, when it comes to liability, bro, who is responsible, okay? Like, if the government and these big tech companies want us to get fucking IDs, at least take some fucking ownership, take some L's, give us some money back. If ultimately you end up taking some of our most personal information, giving it to a third party, and letting it get stolen. And you know, it's funny to me that when you go to a lot of these, like, authentication things, it's always like, don't worry, we'll delete your information, we'll delete your selfie. And then it almost turns out that that never happens, okay? Usually the information is sitting on some fucking server or an unsecured bucket in the worst case for somebody in the world to just grab, okay? And in this case, a bunch of hackers decided we're going to target Discord's, like, support tool, and then they won from there. They got people's information. Now, I've seen people downplay this by saying, it's not a big deal, Muda. It's only a small amount of people. Bro, in my opinion, even one person having their personally identifiable information leaked like this is enough, okay? But there's way more people than just one getting hacked through this, okay? Obviously, it's not the entire website.
You're a fucking hero down in that list. I just spoke to my cousin.
We would have a much different video here. But this is still really bad. Now, obviously, not every single person in Discord age verification was absolutely compromised. It was, from my understanding, people that were involved with the actual, like, support system, right?
And
so
I
they
killed
went through
fucking midget deserved it.
Now, obviously,
little asshole tried to
if you're
bang your
somebody
sister,
who's been
you know
affected
that?
like this, Discord should have sent you an email with that specific mention, and if they did, probably, I don't honestly at this point, like, aside from going to your credit monitoring service and, like, making sure that things are kind of locked down or monitored,
something good,
there's really not much more you can do. Look, ultimately, the end of this, the goal for some of these people is identity theft. And I remember when I was growing up,
your former friends have a factory.
you know, I heard the words identity theft.
The way
it was one
I
of the
see
biggest
it,
crimes ever,
if you
right?
take
Somebody
that
could
out,
have
you will have put
their
them out of
identity
business for
stolen,
good.
and God knows what people could do with it, and they would only find out about the shit down the road when things were pretty much done and dusted. So if you are somebody that has your shit leaked,
Who was this?
go to a credit monitoring service, make sure things are locked down, keep an eye on that for a little bit, because if somebody really wants to use your identity for nefarious reasons,
Cool. I'll be at you in a minute.
really, I would say do the fucking best you can to combat that shit. That's pretty much it. So look, ultimately, yes, Discord did get hacked. And you might be wondering, okay, well, how the fuck does Discord's support partner even get hacked? What could happen in this situation? Now, ultimately, look, at the end of the day, there's been a lot of hoopla about Discord and possibly getting hacked. Like, there was one group called, like, spy.net, which was a data harvesting site that scraped apparently like 1 billion something messages from hundreds of users. And it really came out to the fact that apparently it was just public-facing servers. So really, the news that kind of surrounds a lot of hacks sometimes gets lost in misinformation sauce, okay? This is a lot different than public servers having, like, text messages scraped. But when the public messages get scraped, I think it's really up to Discord to realize, like, bro, you're one of the largest communication platforms in the fucking world. Probably the largest we've ever seen by a country line. And, you know, when these guys end up taking our shit so when they don't put any serious thought into protecting people, what recourse do we have? You know, in a few days, Discord CEO is about to go in front of fucking the U.S. government
Hey, man, is it
for
ready?
talking about extremism on their platform.
She's all
but
set. Get
honestly,
in.
I really do think that at some point we have
She's
to have a
packing enough to
conversation.
take out that
Bro,
crack lab.
if the world wants us to use ID verification,
wired in a delay
then
timer
these
to give you
companies,
time to
and,
get
and
out.
also
Cool,
the
good
government
luck.
needs to be fucking held liable financially and legally whenever this kind of shit happens. Because honestly, 2025, for the last few years even, the amount of insane cyber attacks that have been happening is just insane. And the amount of people that have been getting compromised is just, you know, it makes you wonder, like, is there ever any effort put in to just protecting you guys, even slightly, on these sites? You know, again, one of the only assumptions that somebody could kind of have about this is, like, how does Zendesk get hacked? And honestly, it could be multiple ways, like, you know, it could be a phishing email, something similar to this. Like, this is a joke email, obviously. I mean, it's a phishing attempt. But you can see that, obviously, all caps, somebody's Jeff Bezos, CEO of Amazon. It's on this note that I'm informing the world of my intention to give out my fortune of 124 billion of my wealth. You know, if you're somebody that believes this, there's a whole lot of Nigerian princes you can fucking meet out in the internet, okay? Goddamn. But look, in the end, it's getting to a point where hacking a lot of these organizations is starting to become easier. For instance, one of the things that I was reading on a few days ago was apparently this AI-powered spam GPT that apparently creates some of the most insane phishing attacks against organizations or the individual person, right? And it's a cybercrime toolkit that surfaces on the dark web, offering phishing as a service. The platform allows attackers to run professional grade campaigns with minimal technical expertise for a reported price of $5,000. Now, obviously, I'm somebody that has browsed the dark web, so I decided to go to the dark web. And I did in fact find the exact places, the exact sites, the exact threads
Open the gates and
selling
waste the
these
dumb
services,
fuck, Holmes.
right? This AI sender email, this phishing spam GPT. But the thing is, ultimately, at the end, it's just a bunch of individuals using commonly available AI techniques in order to launch attacks, right? I mean, it's crazy to think that you can download models, and I'm not going to show you exactly what they are, but I've talked about this before. You know, if you go to ChatGPT or you go to, like, any publicly available, easily accessible AI, they have a lot of guardrails, but you can always download uncensored local artificial intelligences, and provided you know what to do with system prompts and whatnot, you can really take the guardrails off and start using these toolkits to write, again, malware. You don't even have to pay a company like $5,000 to do the system prompt bullshit for you. This is stuff that, you know, unfortunately, anybody that has no understanding of any computer malware can ask AI now to write themselves decently competent, not perfect, ransomware, and then learn how to package that ransomware into an easily accessible format, like a PDF file, and then send that through an email.
What the fuck is he doing?
And provided somebody accesses that on the support networks, because remember, it's not like everyone is using military-grade encryption and VMs and all these crazy systems to secure themselves. Everyone is capable of getting hacked, okay? There's a good chance that even the smartest people can sometimes be susceptible to what appears to be a pretty easy hack. And ultimately, it's because of these kind of hacks. And again, this is just very much speculation on how I think this happened. Again, email spam is probably some of the most common way to deliver shit. But generally speaking, these guys got hacked. And what shocks me is that they were storing your personal information, like your driver's licenses, for easy accessibility. And I think at the end of the day, that's fucking lawsuit worthy, okay? Especially against Discord, okay? Discord should have been making sure that whoever their third party was getting rid of your personal fucking information after they verify it. Because if this is the world we're gonna head into, at least let's secure our people before, you know, the worst tends to happen. So if you are affected by this, check your credit monitoring, and ultimately, if anybody asks you for ID on the internet, tell them to go fuck themselves, all right? It doesn't matter how big or small they are, okay? Keep yourself safe. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I'm out.
One of the more perennially interesting topics in religious studies is that of lost books of Scripture. The fascination with the Book of Enoch, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Judas, And eventually, recently revealed scriptures such as the Book of Mormon very much still fire the imagination of religious believers, academics, and skeptics alike. While the discovery of the largely Gnostic scriptures of the Nag Hammadi library, or the more sectarian documents found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, have over the past 100 years or so gotten most of the headlines, lost scriptures of the Hebrew Bible, or the Christian Old Testament, and even a few from the New Testament have been known about and commented on for centuries, millennia even. Within the Hebrew Bible itself, there are numerous references to now long-lost books of epics, poetry, wisdom literature, kingly annals, prophetic oracles, and much more. Let's take a tour of the world of lost Israelite literature, hinted at, referenced, and sometimes even quoted in cryptic sections in the Bible all around us. If you're interested in magic, Hermetic philosophy, alchemy, Kabbalah, or the history of the arcane, make sure to check out my content on topics here and make sure to subscribe to Esoterica. And also check out curated playlists on various topics. Also, if you want to support this work of providing accessible, scholarly, and free content on topics in esotericism here on YouTube, I'd hope to consider supporting my work over at my Patreon with a one-time donation with the super thanks option you can find below the video, or by picking up some cool channel merch you can find over at the store tab. But now, let's turn to the lost kingly annals and to some of the most famous lost books, like the Book of the Wars of Yahweh, the lost texts of the ancient Israelites. I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and welcome to Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion.
Carl! You're a fucking hero down in that list. I just spoke to my cousin.
Not with my people, I ain't. Shit's still fucked up. Man, I got homies I used to run with
Like
that turn
many
they back
people
on
reading through the
over-
Bible for the first time, I recall that I started noticing, let's call them anomalies.
this?
I work for
Things
Woozie.
such
He told
as
me to call you.
monuments which
Alright, what's up?
stand to
I'm
this
reading a
very
car with
day.
explosives, so you
Strange
can take out
kind
the
of
crack
comment in the
factory.
Torah, which was
Drop around the
alleged to have
garage
been written
downtown.
at that time by
I'll be at you in a minute.
Moses. The narrative somehow taking place in the ancient past, but also it seems like it's a current memory in the time of the writer to this very day. Other anomalies also jump out at me. Redundant stories that seem very different from one another, but describing the same event, sometimes right there next to each other in the text. The Noah's Ark story comes to mind. Or that time that Elchanan killed Goliath. But then it's David a little bit later on who did it, and that's the story that got immortalized, and it just always struck me as like pure Davidic propagandic revisionism. Perhaps the most striking of these anomalies were apparent references to other books that Scripture thought highly enough to quote, but don't appear to survive at all, much less as other books of the Bible. These references should alert us to a very overlooked, but very easy to understand reality of the Hebrew Bible, called the Old Testament. It's not a book. It's a library. Yeah, I know people say things like, well, the Bible says. Yeah, people can say all kinds of nonsense, but that's born out of a theological commitment that the Bible is the complete, coherent, inerrant Word of God, and not a historical, critical understanding of what the Bible, in fact, is. What we call the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament, or the Bible, is actually a small library of Israelite literature composed of numerous genres, composed, edited, and redacted over centuries, millennia even, representing a wide range of theological, political, and literary origins and outlooks. And when we think of the Hebrew Bible as a library rather than as a book, a Bible, much less a theologically homogeneous book for that matter, the plurality of voices, the rough literary themes, the strange references to books not found in that surviving library all start to make a bit more sense. Of course, it's totally reasonable that any library will be composed of books that refer to and quote books not in that library. That's as true as this library or your local library, as much as it's going to be true of the surviving Israelite library that we know of as the Bible. So, what do we know about the books that the compilers of the Hebrew Bible thought were important, maybe even sacred enough to refer to and even quote as they composed the text that we now think of as the Bible, but are lost to us? The answer is somewhat surprising and somewhat disappointing. Surprising in that there are at least 20 other Israelite books that are known from references and quotations in the Hebrew Bible, maybe many more, possibly even double that and then some, if we count various prophetic works and things like letters, which could, of course, count as scripture. I mean, Paul wrote some letters, and those all became sacred writ for Christians. I mean, the end of 2 Timothy 4, like, hey, could you bring that coat that I forgot? And also, don't you dare trust the coppersmith Alexander. Those are all telltale signs that Paul never thought of what he was doing when he sat down to write those letters as writing scripture. He never thought, I'm going to write the Bible, and Alexander got shade on him forever. They were just letters to people that shared his nascent faith. But these references are also disappointing, because of the obvious. These texts are often just referenced, rarely quoted, and when they are quoted, they're quoted in a very cryptic, archaic style, and all share in common that, at least as far as spring of 2024 when I'm writing this episode, they're all very much lost to history. Now, that's not to say they couldn't pop up somewhere over there. I mean, a completely intact tomb from the time of Ramses II, 13th century BCE, was discovered in Palmachim in southern Israel in just 2022. In the light of, the correct conditions, papyrus and vellum can endure for millennia. And I'm certain that the earth has not given up all their secrets, so here's to hoping. But let's take a tour of the lost library of the Israelites, known only as references and quotations from the Hebrew Bible. And, I have something similar to say about the New Testament toward the end. I know that everybody knows, at least watching this channel, that the letter of Jude in the New Testament quotes from the book of Enoch. Everyone around here knows that. It's commonplace knowledge for esoteric fans. But there's more to the New Testament in this regard as well. But without doubt, the most famed lost Israelite works are the Sefer Milchamot Yahweh, or the Book of the Wars of Yahweh, and the Sefer Yashar, or the Book of the Just, or the Book of the Upright. We're not quite sure how to translate that. Perhaps as the same book as the Sefer Shir, or the Book of the Song. We'll come back to that in a minute. Numbers 21 contains 3 quotations, one of which is definitely referenced as coming from the Book of the Wars of Yahweh, though 2 quotations nearby may have the exact same textual origins. The first is at Numbers 21, 14 through 18, and that's clearly a poetic quotation from the Wars of Yahweh, given some very obscure geographic information, but we don't know what it really means. It's not clear what the Waheb and the Sufa are, though the Arnon was the river that marked the boundary between the Israelite and Moabite territories respectively, so it probably has something to do with the context of them wandering around in there. Directly following from that quotation, what appears to be like a work song, like hi-ho, off to work we go, but it's not yours. It's Israelites, and they're digging it well, with references that seem congruent with the military annal, at least as far as the Israelite version. A bit further down still is the account of the defeat of King Sihon of the Amorites, and we have a positively strange insertion into the Hebrew Bible. An Amorite victory song celebrating the defeat of the Moabites. Why would the Torah include an Amorite victory song? Well, probably to showcase just how impressive the defeat of the Amorite king Sihon was. Well, if they beat the Moabites, and we beat them, well, look how powerful we are. Israelite flex. This Amorite victory song is, like many of the quotations we're going to be talking about throughout the course of this episode, written in an archaic form of Hebrew, ancient even by the time it was included in the book of Numbers. So, even by the time we got to the writer of the Bible, it was already pretty ancient and weird. Again, the martial character of the song, along with its proximity to the other quotations, might just mean that all three of these quotations have their origins in the Sefer Milchemot Yahweh, the Book of the Wars of Yahweh. So, what might that book have been? What was the Sefer Milchemot Yahweh? Well, we don't know. It's lost. But it seems reasonable to conclude that it was something like an epic military history detailing battles between Yahwistic forces led by Moses and eventually Joshua against all their various enemies, the various ites like the Amorites or the Jebusites or the Moabites. That these sections are in poetic form is probably a predictor of the style of the text overall, which would be frankly congruent with other military epics of the region and, well, beyond. Think of it as something like maybe it was an Israelite Iliad, perhaps. The other text quoted on a few occasions in the Hebrew Bible is the Sefer Yashar, or the Book of the Just, or the Book of the Upright. What Yashar refers to isn't clear here because, well, that should be obvious by now. The book is lost, and so we don't know what it refers to. The most certain quotation from the Sefer Yashar is from the text found at 2 Samuel 1:17-27. It's a long quotation, where we're given a lament or a funeral dirge over King Saul and Jonathan composed by King David and said to have been contained in the Sefer Yashar. Again, the language here is archaic, sometimes cryptic, and not always fully understood, not by us and not even by its ancient editors. In fact, I suspect this is very probably a composition from the time period of David in the 10th century BCE. I honestly could just believe it actually was written by David. It seems perfectly reasonable to me. The other two references from the Sefer Yashar are made complicated when the Masoretic Hebrew text of the Hebrew Bible and the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, the Septuagint, are compared to one another. At Joshua 10:12-13, we have an account, again in very archaic language, of the sun and the moon standing still in opposition to one another as part of a larger battle wherein the Israelites defeat the Amorites. Back to the Amorites for some reason. Again, this poetry was archaic by the time it came to be included in the book of Joshua, and it, again, probably wasn't fully understood by those scribes even at that time. But such solar and lunar oppositions are actually known from other Mesopotamian sources to spell doom or blessings depending on which days they occur, and thus we have a kind of archaic interfacing of something like proto-astrology and Yahwistic divine intervention on the battlefield. You can look at some of those oracle texts and I can reference them in the description. But this poetic section is said to be quoted from Sefer Yashar, though only in the Masoretic text, but not in the Greek translation of the Septuagint. Well, why should we care if it isn't in a Greek translation? Well, because the Masoretic text was only fully redacted through the 7th and 10th centuries of the Common Era, while the Septuagint was translated from Hebrew all the way back in the 3rd century BCE. And it's sometimes a better witness to an older stratum of the Hebrew Bible, despite the fact that it's, well, translated into Greek. So the fact that the reference is missing in the Septuagint casts some doubt on if this is ultimately a quotation from the Sefer Yashar, or just an interpolation put there by the Masoretic editors. In fact, we have the opposite problem when it comes from the other quotation from the Sefer Yashar. At 1 Kings 8, we find another archaic poetic quotation now attributed to Solomon, enigmatically describing the steadfastness of Yahweh, probably as a part of a temple dedication hymn. The passage is referenced as, "Behold, is it not written in the book of the song?" but only in the Septuagint and not in the Masoretic text. So why is there a reference here to the Book of Song? And if it's not referenced as such in the Masoretic text, why do you think it could have come from the Book of Yashar if the reference is to this other text, the Book of Song? Well, it's because in Hebrew, the word for song, shir, shin yod resh, and yashar, yod shin resh, are just that close in spelling. But it's possible scholars think, in fact likely, that the Greek translation Book of Song in the Septuagint is actually downstream of a Hebrew scribal error, where the shin and the yod of Yashar and Shir got transposed. It's supposed to be the Book of Yashar, not the Book of Song, not the Book of Shir, and thus the quotation is, I think, likely, and scholars tend to agree,
originally from the Sefer Yashar and not some other Sefer Shir. But again, the attribution only occurs in the Septuagint and not in the Masoretic text. So what was the Sefer Yashar? Well, it seems to have contained something like archaic poetic texts. Archaic, again, even when they were edited into the text we have as the Hebrew Bible, apparently containing a funeral dirge by David, a battle hymn associated with Joshua, and seemingly a poem on the dedication of the temple by Solomon. That said, it's difficult to group these different texts coherently into one thematic idea, aside from, well, they're all poetry and there's a connection to ancient Israelite royalty somehow. Otherwise, it's a mystery. We don't know what the Sefer Yashar was. Finally, I should also point out that a lot of texts in history have come to be called Sefer Milchamot Yahweh or Sefer Milchamot Hashem or Sefer Yashar, but none of them are connected to the ancient lost Israelite text. In fact,
Well, you just said you wanted to watch TV outside. Now you want to watch
one of
TV
my
in here?
favorite Jewish medieval philosophers, the 14th century philosopher Gersonides, his central philosophical work was entitled Sefer Milchamot Hashem, but it was deemed so heretical by other Jewish authorities at the time that they argued that it should not be called Sefer Milchamot Hashem.
I know, but now I got to figure out how to get on there.
Hashem, but
that's a little different.
Sefer Milchamot al Hashem, the book of the wars against Hashem, against God. So that's a great date on that book. There's also a 18th century book of Yashar forgery that ended up being connected to some Rosicrucian circles at that time. So these books have a weird, long afterlife. Even just random books with the same titles have curious histories all of their own, further testifying to the enduring interest in books like these. I mean, they didn't exist. So people just made them up. Kind of like, H.P. Lovecraft's Necronomicon. The third major category of lost Israelite texts, otherwise known as the Hebrew Bible, are in fact numerous quotations taken from what appears to have been ancient kingly annals. This is a literary genre widely attested.
Damn, that air conditioner is cold, bro.
These texts include books like the Book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel, which is actually cited 18 times in 1st and 2nd Kings. The Book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah, cited 15 times.
I think we made it on the bridge, baby.
And a similar digest of text quoted about 11 times in 1st and 2nd Chronicles, variously known as the Book of the Kings of Israel and Judah, the books of Judah and Israel, the Midrash of the Book of the Kings, the Book of the Chronicles of King David, which
no, I'm not going to make it. Hold on.
David,
make it.
and one called the Acts
I got to get up, turn that air conditioner off.
All of these texts, more or less, seem to again, annals or digests of royal annals.
No, they just stop. It just, the traffic just stops. Middle of the highway, bunch of cars, and they all just, will come to a
battles, building projects, political intrigue against them, trying to assassinate them, or various religious matters, typically when they dedicate some temple or find something in the temple in the case of Josiah. The reference itself is then followed up by the death of the king. He goes and sleeps with his fathers or ancestors, the place of his burial, and then any subsequent information on the secession that follows after the king, assuming he wasn't murdered or deposed.
Okay. No, I'm looking
kind of gains of throning back there in 1st and 2nd Kings. This genre
okay, let me say this, baby. Are you sure you want to come out here?
Israelite literature, though I'll be honest, to most people it's not going to prove terribly interesting. Royal annals are often highly stereotyped chronicles that read more like historical bookkeeping than action-packed narratives. If you want an example of this in the Anglosphere world, you can check out the Chronicle of Bede or the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. This is a classic example of that genre, but in the medieval Anglophone world. But when compared to other ancient Near Eastern texts, like the Kassite Royal Chronicle, these texts do firmly connect the ancient Israelite state bureaucracy with the rest of the region. They just look like another state, a little state, but a state. Thus, they're important for how they situate ancient Israel and ancient Judah as a political entity captured in historical contemporary records, even if they don't contain any, mind-blowing Gnostic secrets or anything. They are still lost and important annals of the world of the ancient Israelites and the ancient Judahites. Though, in the Book of Chronicles, there are about a dozen references to various prophetic and visionary texts that are otherwise lost. These include the Acts of Samuel, the Acts of Nathan the prophet, which actually gets mentioned twice, the prophecy of Ahijah, the Shilonite, the Acts of Edo, the seer, for the enrollment by genealogy, whatever that was, the words of the seers, which seems to be a general work, and several others. Now, all of these prophets are actually known from 1st and 2nd Kings, with the exception of Edo, who's actually only known in Chronicles. But the outstanding question is, do these constitute independent prophetic pieces of literature or independent prophetic works, such as the ones that do survive in the Hebrew Bible, like Isaiah or Ezekiel? Now, of course, collections of prophetic oracles are known from Israelite sources, obviously. Some of the longest books of the Hebrew Bible are, in fact, oracular collections from people like Jeremiah. But they're also known from the surrounding ancient Near East culture. We have enormous amounts of oracular texts from the ancient Akkadians, with Egypt being the weird exception here. There's not much prophetic literature coming out of Egypt. However, most scholars suggest that many of these books were probably specific oracles or other narratives that were actually embedded in that royal annal literature or the digest thereof, which are referenced by the chronicler rather than independent works like the Book of Amos or Isaiah or Ezekiel. However, this is super fascinating. An argument has been made that in fragment 33 of 4Q381, an otherwise unknown Psalm-like text found in the Dead Sea Scrolls,
the weird shit that
might actually be the historical prayer of King Manasseh
listen to
mentioned at
podcasts
2
and play the
Chronicles
game.
33:18,
Like,
otherwise lost.
coincidence.
I'll have a link in the description to that article
Like
if you
that
want to
game's
check
been
that argument
games
out.
have been messing with me
Chronicles
for a while.
also contains a few other
yeah, they
lost
mess
texts
with
of
me,
interest,
dude,
including
you know,
some
the
lost
AI,
census data,
I was
an
like,
alleged
no,
first
dude,
draft
no.
of the temple,
I was
the
like,
the temple
I
plans, the
was
blueprints of the
paranoid
temple revealed to David by
before
Yahweh, and
we
then
even
passed
knew what
on to
AI
Solomon
was, dude,
at
or,
1 Chronicles 28:19. Some further writings
So
by
it's like,
David
who
and
knows,
Solomon
man?
on the proper division of the
Like,
temple
God was
staff, such as
talking to
priests
like,
and
yeah, who
Levites
knows
and
what they can
people
do
who do
to
all the
us,
cleaning up
dude,
of that.
that they've been able to do for
Slaughterhouse,
decades, probably.
which might be echoed in
Right.
1 Chronicles 24 through
Because I
26,
was
so it
asking, do
might
you
not
think
be
they can
lost.
control us like
We also learn
robots?
of a lament said to have
Like,
been
and it
composed
probably
by
depends upon
Jeremiah,
your
who had
personality
his own
and
book
your
otherwise,
demeanor
over
and your,
King Josiah, who was
you
very
know.
popular in the literature
I
of the
told them
Hebrew
I think
Bible,
that's why they prey
which,
on
quote,
those gifted
male
and
and female
talented
singers have
kids,
spoken until
or the
today,
autistic
and it was apparently
kids,
taken
or
up
those
into the
people that
official
are more
repertoire of
prone to,
Keynote,
you know,
or Laments, a collection that survives in another book of the Bible,
listen to their
like
inner
Lamentations.
voice,
So
or,
Lamentations is a
you know, they
specific
probably
set of
can't fuck with
lamentations
those
for the
people
destruction
who've
of
got too much
Jerusalem.
shit to do.
It's not
They're
difficult to
too
believe
busy
there
to
were lots of
fucking listen to
collections
their
of
inner voice.
lamentations
No, they are. They're just
because
too
it was
busy.
the Iron
Got too much
Age,
shit to
and
do.
Israel was a tiny polity in a major trade zone that was destined to be destroyed. A few final texts that are worth being mentioned here is that it said that the prophet
They got us
Samuel actually
talking about
composed the
the
text for the
AI
correct conduct of
games.
kings that was said
Like,
to have
yeah,
been
I know,
stored in
man.
the Mishkan or the tabernacle.
It's like, who
You'll
knows?
recall that Samuel was a
It's
bit
like,
of
but
a
that's even before the AI, we had
theological
hackers.
anarchist and
And
actually
playing
resisted the
online, they never
self-imposition
knew
of
what was
royalty onto the
legit,
Israelites.
what wasn't.
It's also clear this book went
So, yeah,
missing
it
early
started a
because
while
Israelite
ago.
and Judahite kings were largely awful, so they definitely didn't read any book about how they should conduct themselves justly. Though
Yeah.
it may have been actually taken up into 1 Samuel 8 and 12, and maybe some of these rules eventually found themselves into Deuteronomy 17, which has some kind of ideas about how a king should conduct themselves. Maybe, we don't know. Finally, there seems to have been a body of literature surrounding King Solomon. Of course, how could we get away from an esoteric episode without somehow bringing King Solomon into
So
this?
fucking
This would
welcome,
include
man.
wisdom
What
works,
you know about my
songs, and
family?
proverbs. Now, many of the numbers in relation to these texts were probably very inflated.
What it look like I
thousands
made
of
of?
songs and
Pudding?
thousands of proverbs. But such collections attributed to Solomon in the surviving book of Mishlei, of Proverbs, and texts such as the very famous love poem, Shir Shirim, or the Song of Songs, are all attributed, rightly or wrongly, to the third Israelite king. Further, we're also told of his wisdom over trees, animals, birds, crawling things,
lose the truck, and you fail.
and fish.
What's the GPS?
Such lists,
Second, fail
these
what?
lists categorizing
And
the
third,
entities of the
who the fuck
cosmos,
are you?
from gods and spirits to
Need to
royal
know
officials and
basis
other kinds
only.
of entities,
Oh,
were
one more
actually
thing.
well
This
known
baby's got
in
4
other
wheel
literature,
steering instead of a
especially ancient
handbrake.
Egyptian
Good luck.
literature, and they're known as onomastica. We have several examples of onomastica from ancient Egypt, the most famous being the onomasticon of Amenhotep. Scholars think that it's possible, and perhaps even likely, that these are references in 1 Kings 5, might be a reference to an onomasticon composed to or attributed to King Solomon. Again, people don't make things up out of whole cloth, and it makes some sense that he may have composed something like this. Other people did. Regardless, this wisdom of natural things would then go on to great fame and would lay the foundation for Solomon's wisdom in esoteric topics as well, especially the summoning and binding of demons. Of course, Solomon did much more as recorded according to the Hebrew Bible, and we're told that there existed a book of the Acts of Solomon at one point at 1 Kings 11. It's lost. I wish we had the book of the Acts of Solomon. He was such a character. Of course, the mountain of literature about Solomon, such as the Testament of Solomon, with all its fun, kooky demonology, will more than keep us busy for a lifetime. But what a pity to know there was an original Israelite text that described the Acts of Solomon, and it's vanished from history. In addition to these narrative works, we have at least 20 various letters that are composed by various people throughout the Hebrew Bible, from prophets and kings, and then sent and received from a variety of people up the social ladder. Some letters from the region of ancient Israel actually have survived. We have, for instance, the Lachish letters, which are probably the most famous, though the hundreds of diplomatic correspondence preserved in the Amarna letters just actually testify to how extensive such royal diplomatic correspondence could be. Those, of course, all survive because they are cuneiform pressed into clay tablets. We can just only assume that similar archives once existed in the ancient Israelite state and have long since been destroyed. There are also other texts which Moses and Joshua are said to have written that, if they existed, do not survive. Those are Exodus 17, 14, and Joshua 24. Those are probably more mythological, honestly, along with the text recounting the regions that have not yet been conquered by the Israelites in Joshua 10. Jeremiah seems to have written some texts that got burned, and other ones got thrown into the Euphrates River, but these also might be partly preserved in his eponymous book there toward the end. A law of Moses and a book of the law are repeatedly mentioned, unsurprisingly, and these are sometimes associated with Josiah and him finding a scroll in a wall during a renovation on the Jerusalem temple. That scroll they found in the wall was later validated by the Israelites' prophetess Huldah. Scholars now suspect that these texts are probably ancestors to the text of the Torah as we know it, Josiah's Book of the Law probably comprising a good bit of the work we now know as Deuteronomy, so it probably existed and it was probably also part of his Inquisition. We also have works similar to those already discussed that were archaic even again when the Bible was being composed, and were incorporated into the Bible as we have it. For instance, the Book of the Generations of Adam seems to be quoted probably in full at Genesis 5:1. However, other collections of extremely archaic texts, such as the Testament of Jacob, the Song of the Sea, the Song of the Ark, the Oracles of Balaam, the Song of Moses, the Blessings of Moses, especially the Song of Deborah, the Song of Hannah, and the poetic sections of Habakkuk 3:1-16, all probably represent the oldest compositions of Israelite literature, and they might go all the way back to the very, very, very end of the Bronze Age, and certainly go back to early Iron One. Indeed, if you want to take these texts with wisdom in isolation, these represent the oldest strata of Israelite literature that we have at all. I mean, some of these sections are so old that linguistically, things like the definite article in the Hebrew language hasn't totally evolved yet. It's just incredible how ancient some of these parts of the Hebrew Bible are compared to some other sections of the Hebrew Bible written during the post-exilic period, which even have things like Persian loanwords in them, just showing you how extremely long the history of the Hebrew Bible's composition is. This document stretching out over 1,500 at least years in terms of its composition, which is all the more reason talking about the Bible is nonsense, as if a group of people over the course of 1,500 plus years just never changed their mind and were theologically homogeneous for the entire run of that period. It's befuddling. Oh yeah, the New Testament. The New Testament also contains or refers to a handful of texts that we otherwise think are lost as well. Now, again, I know that everyone watching this channel knows that in the letter of Jude, the first book of Enoch gets quoted there. But that doesn't count for this episode, because Enoch isn't lost. while chunks of it do survive in Hebrew and Aramaic, it survives intact in the classical Ethiopic language is. So we have the quotation, we have the text. However, there might be some more Enochic traditions which might survive at 1 Peter 3:19 with the concept of preaching to the spirits in prison. That seems to be an Enochic kind of idea, along with the naming of the Egyptian sorcerers, the Khartoumeh, that ruled with Moses and Aaron, Janus and Jambres, at 2 Timothy 3:8. Those names don't occur in the Hebrew Bible, and that's probably a reference to some ancient pseudepigraphical source which might survive and might not. However, Paul does seem to quote from some source at 1 Corinthians 2:9, which seems to maybe be a crib or a, half quotation of Isaiah 64:4, but many ancient church fathers, such as Origen and Jerome, nothing to shake a stick at, actually held that the quotation was from a lost apocryphon or apocalypse of Elijah. It also kind of shows up in Gospel of Thomas 17, and it may have just been an ancient commonplace, we don't know. Regardless, this quotation is set off as "it is written," which typically refers to some kind of scriptural reference, and it may very have been some lost work associated with Elijah. Jude, again with the Enoch quote, also mentions the traditional contest between the archangel Michael and Satan over the physical corpse of Moses. Of course, this tale doesn't occur in the Hebrew Bible, even though it's fabulous. Satan, by that time, or Hasatan, was still more of a title or an entity in the divine council at that time, kind of prosecuting attorney rather than a, devil-like character in that period. But through the apocalyptic period, he definitely became the devil. But this story of Satan and Michael arguing over the body of Moses became extremely interesting. Just what text or tradition Jude is referencing isn't clear, but this may be something like the surviving testament or assumption of Moses literature, but it could also be another lost text that we just don't have. Lastly, James 4:5 may contain a corrupt quotation which doesn't appear to come from the Hebrew Bible at all. It's possible that this is a line of a Greek mistranslation of a lost Hebrew text of an apocryphal book of Eldad and Modad, with reference in the Hebrew Bible that can go into prophetic frenzy at one point in the Hebrew Bible, which is then that apocryphal text referenced in a wildly popular Christian text called the Shepherd of Hermas. That text very nearly made it into the New Testament. It's the closest thing that's not in, but almost made it in. Now, this argument is a bit complex, and I'll actually include a link in the description if you want to dig down into this and see, is this actually a corrupt reference to a Hebrew apocryphal book? As I mentioned earlier, it should be unsurprising that we find references to other texts within the library of the ancient Israelite literature that we call the Hebrew Bible or Old Testament. What might be surprising is just how many lost texts are referenced and how many very archaic texts existed, predating the composition of the biblical text as we know them. Indeed, we don't know, and we will likely never know just how much ancient Israelite literature existed. But if any other civilization is a predictor, certainly much more has been lost than preserved, and we should never fall victim to the survivor bias. Just because something's preserved doesn't mean it's right or representative of the culture. And with a careful eye, we can still detect the ghostly remnants of some of that literature. The Hebrew Bible and the New Testament share in common that they're heterogeneous collections of widely varied material for whom literary references were a means to compose narrative and to assert authority, among a great many other uses. Thus, again, it isn't surprising that numerous quotations and references survive only as obscure memories, difficult, often corrupt quotations, or quotations that were so archaic they weren't really understood, or references which are just the whispers of history that we're lucky to hear at all. This episode is deeply indebted to De Villa's fantastic article, Quotations from Lost Books in the Hebrew Bible, found in the volume Old Testament Pseudepigrapha, More Non-Canonical Scriptures. The More Non-Canonical Scriptures tells you there's 2 other volumes prior to this one. But if you're interested in a deeper dive into this topic, you should absolutely check out his article, and honestly, that's just a book you should have on your shelf if you're interested in esoterica. In fact, De Villa has such amazing stuff on America About Mysticism, What a great scholar, and a great blog, Ilya Judaica. I read that blog every single week. It's that good. So go subscribe to that. Tell the Bill I said hello. Thank you for watching Esoterica. More obscure stuff on the Bible to come, I'm absolutely sure. So stay tuned, subscribe, and again, thank you for watching. I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and this is Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion.
You're lucky my man isn't here, cabrón.
Look where you're driving at,
I've been on YouTube for almost 19 years, and I'm not kidding. I have never seen nor heard of something like this before. Yesterday I made that video about all, like, the Taylor Swift hoopla, and the video got copyright claimed because I showed a snippet of lyrics from her song Wood, which is an ode to Travis Kelce's cock, and I said a couple of the lines. And it got claimed because apparently that counted as me using the melody of Wood, the Wiener Ballad. That is unbelievable. Keep in mind, I didn't sing it. It's not like I gave an a cappella version. I just said a couple of the lyrics because they were so silly, and it's the one track on there that I thought was like actually just kind of revolting, like it just wasn't good. Overall, I thought the album was just, like, very generic and mid, but not nearly as bad as people were saying. But I used this one as an example for a track that I just didn't like. And somehow, that was enough to flag the copyright system internally. Now, it's not like a strike or anything, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but I just found this so fascinating that now we split revenue on that video because I said some of the lines. Again, I didn't even sing it. All I did was say, like, redwood tree, not hard to see, Dick learned to pee, put soap in my eyes. I had to remix it here a little bit, just out of fear that this might get claimed if I say, like, the full lines. Like, and speaking of soap, by the way, our vanilla scent is available now at usecheeky.com, best soap in the universe. But the point is, like, I cannot believe that just saying the words, without even a single hint of melody, was enough to get flagged because Taylor Swift, I guess, owns all of those words in that combination. That's wild to me. Now, I do know, of course, that you can get copyright claimed by doing, like, a cover of a song, or if you're, like, singing the hook to a chorus of a mainstream song, sometimes that'll, flag it internally. Like, I know that happens, but this is so far removed from that, because not only was I not singing, it was only, like maybe 10 seconds of that section of the song, too, that I said the words. It is crazy. Like, there's no music or anything there. I didn't have, like, the instrumental going or anything. I'm really just stunned. So I saw this last night. Obviously, I decided to take action just to see if, like, Taylor Swift's legal team was going to fight tooth and nail about me stepping on her toes by reading her copyrighted words. I guess she owns these words now. But I took action, and it has been overturned, which is nice. But I do wonder, for a channel that doesn't have the, ability to fight back against a claim like this, would it have stuck? Like, would a smaller channel, maybe like a Swifties fan account, still have this claim? I don't know. I'm just surprised that it was even allowed in the first place. Since when are words forbidden to use because an artist used them in their songs? Or maybe I guess it was me showing a snippet of the lyrics on screen, but even then, showing some words being copyrightable is pretty crazy to me. It is, I am not kidding, I've never seen something like this before. And since we're on the topic, I did learn that my assessment on her level of greed yesterday was underselling it. Apparently, and I've looked into this and it seems accurate, there are 28 variants of the same album that she is selling her fans. 28! And this album is less than a week old. That is crazy. And the differences between each variant are so trivial. Like, it's usually like a different cover or a different name, such as my personal favorite, The Crowd is Your King Edition, parentheses, Summertime Spritz Pink Shimmer Vinyl Target Exclusive. That seems a little excessive to me, but I've seen a lot of defensiveness from Swifties that have purchased every single one of them, saying, nobody was forced to buy these, we wanted to support her. I mean, she's a fucking billionaire, she doesn't need you to buy 28 copies of the same thing, but again, it is your money, you spend it however you want. You can wipe your ass with it doesn't bother me. You can waste your money in whatever ways make you happy. But come on, there is no justification for why Taylor Swift is selling 28 and ongoing, it seems like she's planning to introduce more variants, copies of the exact same album to her fans, other than just to make a lot of money off of them. It inflates the fuck out of her numbers too. I think each variant should count as its own separate album as opposed to all roped together as Life of a Showgirl sells. Because that shit is just foul. That is so absurd. It's like if I was going to show you my Skechers collection, and it's just the same pair of Skechers Go Walk 28 times, but with like dirt placed in different places. Like that'd be the only difference. Or like maybe the stitching was a little different on this one versus that one. But I have 28 copies of the same pair of Skechers. It's absurd. Like it is the only reason to have this many variants is to squeeze your community for all the money that they have. And again, if they want to like, you know, spend hundreds of dollars to own every variant of this album, all power to them. But it is greedy. Like you can't explain that away or justify it. It is greedy.
They're doing variant albums
Taylor Swift only
now.
really cares about the money with this one. She already apparently released a little
like
video
comic
with
books,
AI
variant covers.
filters.
They're
It is
doing
crazy.
variant
This is the album
albums.
rollout, and she's just freely, willy-nilly using AI.
Like I didn't even know they sold albums really. You know, like
to breathe life or like.
So how big of an
Creativity or
audience?
passion to the project. She instead just
This
uses
has got to
AI
be money
to save
laundering.
money.
I don't.
It does seem like the entire purpose.
So okay, so
behind
how
Life
big
of a
is
Showgirl
the
and
crowd for
monetization model
albums
here and everything she's
anymore?
doing with it is just to make as much money off as little as
I mean,
possible.
it's a neat. I
Which
know
if
they
you're
say,
Swiftie
oh,
who
this and that.
doesn't mind,
Okay,
thinks
but yeah,
Taylor
that's a
Swift needs
niche
to need a
market
bigger bag by
compared
any
to
means
digital
necessary, then
downloads.
that's
and,
okay too. I just don't think there's
So
any
now
need
on
for
top of that
mental gymnastics
already,
to try and explain how it's actually
like
not
dedicated, whatever you
because
would call
it
that
is.
market,
There is just
obvious
no world
market,
where that makes any level of
you're
sense
gonna
to
sell
have
them
this many
even
variants
more,
and ongoing. Like there'll probably be like fucking
and you're gonna.
400
You
versions of
want me
this
to
by the
believe
end of the
you
year.
sold that many of
The
that?
goddamn
You
Life
are
of a
no,
Showgirl
I
Travis
swear,
Kelce
dude,
Hot
it's
Dog
just
Turbo
weird.
Arcade Edition or something dropping this Christmas. Like it is just for the sake of making even
That's
more
all
money
my
off of
suspicion.
an
It's
already
just they
finished
have so
album
much
that she keeps
money they have
repackaging
to
and selling to the
funnel it
community.
places,
There are more
or they have,
variants of
or they're
Life of a
trying to make her
Showgirl than there are
appear
re-releases of The
popular,
Last of
or
Us and Skyrim put
like
together.
Michael
Like
Jackson
it
didn't
is
have
an
variant.
outrageous number. But again, if you do not care, that's fine. But there's just no reason to get mad about people rightfully pointing out that this is a preposterous level of greed with it. Because it is.
You know,
Like
he
just
was actually older.
it's time to be honest about it. It is just about the money
I mean,
here
it
with
wasn't
this model.
You know,
And if it
it's
doesn't bother
80s
you,
or
it doesn't
something,
bother you.
but
That's fine
anyway.
too.
But
Anyway,
no,
got a
it
little
shows,
lost
like,
in the
a
sauce
fan
there on
coming
like
up
the
and
variance
freaking the
tangent.
fuck out.
The whole
Like,
thing that I
Like, she
wanted to
might
yap
as well
about was
been
just that
white.
copyright claim.
No,
That
that was
is
not a lie. I watched
preposterous.
that show
I
about
hope that was
Elvis,
just
and
some
they
kind
weren't
of fluke
lying. Like,
and an
no, dude,
isolated
the
incident
whole
that isn't
there was
something that's
piss
happening
running.
across
The
the
girls
platform. Because
were
I would feel really bad for people
like
that
they
do want to
were
like celebrate
coming,
the album
dude.
that
They
are
were
just talking about
pissing
it,
them, and back
getting
then they
claimed
wouldn't say
for it.
squirting.
Taylor Swift
They said
isn't
pissing
above
themselves.
copyright law
But
where
like,
she
no,
can
she's
just
like,
rewrite
you could
what
see
is
her,
and
they
is not
panned it into the
acceptable
audience, and
at
she's
the
like freaking the
mercy of
fuck
her
out.
will.
And like a
You
bodyguard
can
comes and
talk
gets her and
about the
takes her on
songs.
stage.
You
Like, no,
can
and she's
show
like
lyrics and
full body hugging
boy howdy,
Michael
if you can
as
believe
he's
this,
trying to
you can
sing.
even
Like,
say
no,
the
I mean,
words
like
that she uses in her
I'm not
songs,
sure they
or
have
rather
fans.
you
Like, I've
should be
seen the
able to.
stadiums.
Again,
They can
I
pack
wasn't doing an
stadiums.
a
I'm not
cappella
doubting
cover
that they're
of
not
Wood
popular,
or
that they're
anything.
not.
Like
But
there
like,
is no
no, like,
melodies
come on.
that
There
she
was not,
owns
there's
that
no
she can
stuff.
claim by me
28
just saying the words.
different
So you are allowed to
variants of
say
vinyl
some of the lyrics
albums
from
in the
these
year
songs without fear of
2025.
copyright claims or anything like
And
that.
I just
Like
don't.
I really, I have to imagine this
But I
had to
mean,
be a mistake.
maybe.
And of course, it didn't come personally from Taylor. I'm not stupid enough to think that
Oh,
she
go
was
ahead.
right
Yeah.
there watching the video, got angry,
And
and claimed it or
maybe
something.
I just
I know this
sometimes
is
I
just
just
from
feel
like
like no,
her
this
army
Walmart
of
has to have something to
lawyers
put
and
on
her
the shelf.
team, whatever. But
And
this
these
is a
print
huge
like
overreach
they
that
just
hopefully isn't something that's
The
common
machine
right
has
now,
to
because it
produce.
shouldn't be. Anyway,
So,
that's
I
really
mean,
about it.
maybe there's a lot of trailer kids out there, I guess.
As authorities investigate the cause of an explosion and subsequent
really?
fire at a home belonging to South Carolina Circuit Court Judge Diane
But I could see it being a little
Goodstein and
collector's
former
thing.
state senator
But even
Arnold
then, dude,
Goodstein,
album is
some
already
Democrats
pretty
suspect
collector
that
thing,
the
yeah,
Trump
so who knows,
administration
who knows?
officials who have been saying all sorts of terrible things about
Who
this
knows?
judge might have something to do with inspiring
She
an
is
attack
big.
against the home. Now, let me be
They
absolutely
just
clear.
she
This
seems
investigation is
big because
ongoing,
there's
and
nobody
so
else.
far, authorities have said that there is no
Like
evidence
one
to
of the
suggest that
reasons
there's been
Madonna
foul
seems so
play
big
or
because there was
arson.
lots of
However, they're
other
still
girls
investigating it.
that were nowhere near as
Nonetheless,
big as her,
some of these accusations
but
have
still
led
big.
to
So
Stephen
I don't
Miller
know.
melting down. So stay tuned for that.
Maybe I'm
Now,
just
this
angry old man.
investigation, again, is
But it
ongoing
all
as
seems so
we
fake to me,
speak.
man.
Is there a possibility of arson? So far,
A lot of
authorities
the stuff
say they
online
haven't
now
seen
just
any
seems
evidence of that, but we're going to
manufactured.
wait
Like, it
until
seems
the
like an advertising
investigation is
campaign.
finished. Now, prior to the
Like
fire,
they're
Judge
sinking their own
Goodstein
money
had been
in
receiving
to
hundreds
try to
of
get some
serious
money.
threats,
Well,
including
that's the
death
game.
threats.
Yeah, there.
Before I give you the details on that,
Just
any
like
thoughts,
those
Jake?
rappers who rent the cars.
I'm worried
and the
about it.
whole
So when there's a giant
that they're
fire
trying to sell.
in the house of someone who's been receiving death
Oh,
threats,
okay.
you could tell me that you don't
And
have
yeah,
the
if they
evidence
don't have
yet, and
Taylor
I believe you,
Swift,
and
who do
maybe
they
it was a
have?
coincidence. But my
You're
antennas are
telling me
going
you
to
don't
be
have
up
one.
for not
Beyonce,
a
I think, is kind of
coincidence.
gone. They
So
can't
I'm
really say
super worried about it.
Beyonce is, and they might try to bring
So
her
there's been
back
a lot made about how, especially after the
for one
assassination of
more
Charlie
go.
Kirk, all of this rhetoric, all of
Her
this
late
vitriol
stage,
needs to
right?
be
She's
toned
40
down.
now, probably almost 40s.
What's interesting is that
So they'll bring her
commentary
out
is
for her
directed to
last
some on the left.
mature,
And
you
I
know,
agree
Donna
with it. We need to be
Summer
very
stage,
precise and
maybe.
careful with our words. That doesn't mean that we should
So
stop criticizing or critiquing politicians. At the same
No, I got
time, there hasn't really been
distracted
much said about the
because I
violent
got the
rhetoric
email
coming from the
from
right.
Oklahoma
So
State
that's really
Department
at
of
the heart
Education.
of this
okay, I'm
story and
streaming.
what
Be
has
careful.
led to Stephen
Oh
Miller
no,
But yeah.
melting
I mean
down.
if you're talking
So
about Oklahoma schools, but
hop on
essentially
in. We're going to take a little bit of
they
a ride and I'm
released
going to
this
walk you
year's
through
test
what's been
results,
going on. So, according to local law enforcement, the fire appeared to have been caused by an explosion.
families and
Now,
teachers are
Judge
wondering what it
Goodstein
means.
was
The scores
luckily
were
not in the
lower.
home at the time of this explosion
That's
and
because
fire.
they changed
She was apparently out walking her
like
dog, but
last
multiple
year the
members of her family,
expectations
unfortunately,
were
were
set
inside the
lower.
home, including at
Yeah.
least
Made it
3
look
who have
like
been
students were
hospitalized with
making grade
injuries
level
sustained
goals.
during the fire.
I
So,
told
according to
Buzz that.
South
Buzz
Carolina
said we
Chief
weren't
Justice
last
John
anymore. And I said, well, like,
Kittredge, Judge
I think a lot of
Goldstein
that
was
is
walking
how
on the
we
beach
play
when the
with
fire
our
started.
numbers and how
Her
other
husband,
states, because I said,
Arnold
I
as he
said,
goes
let
by
me
as well,
guess, it's
was in the
Louisiana and
house with
Mississippi.
children,
And
perhaps
he's like,
grandchildren.
yeah, I
The
think,
family
I was
had
like,
to
yeah,
escape by
it's us.
jumping
It's,
from
we're the
a
bottom.
window
Yeah,
or
because last year
balcony.
the
By the way,
expectations
when the
for what
rescue
counted as
efforts were taking
proficient
place,
for
Yeah,
grade
yeah.
the
were
rescuers
set
needed to
lower.
use
That made it look like
kayaks
more
in order to
students
get to
See,
the
they
home
can mess
and
with the
rescue the
numbers.
individuals inside.
grade
And
level
that's
goals
because the
and that
home is like
kind of
on the
this
water and
created
it's hard to
called
get
an
to.
honesty gap.
Quote,
Yeah.
I'm told
So
there
then
were injuries from the
That's why
fall,
they
such
wanted to
as
take
broken
us off of
legs.
federal
Barney's
or
injuries
state.
may have
so
been
They don't want
the
to
most
compare us to the
serious,
other
for he
states.
was
Well, you
airlifted
have
to the
to, man.
hospital.
And you
So
don't
Barney,
have,
again,
like,
the
district,
husband
yeah,
of the
come on.
judge,
this
is
year
reported to have multiple
they
broken
voted to bring
bones
back the
in
higher
his hips,
standards
legs,
that we
and
used in
feet due to the fall.
2023.
The other family
Yeah,
member who was
but
reportedly
no, Okies
hospitalized with serious
understand
injuries
last.
Yeah.
was his son,
Last is last,
Arnold
dude. Yep.
Goodstein
Tougher enough with high
II.
standards help
Now,
make
let's talk
sure
a
that
little
when
bit
a
about
student
why
scores
some are
proficient, it
suspecting that
really
this
means
could have
they're on
been
track.
the product
Yeah.
of foul play, possibly arson. Again,
Yep.
I'm going to
But
repeat
no, they were
again,
desperately,
there's no
yeah, they
evidence
were
of
getting
that
shit.
yet.
People understand what
And there may
last
never be
means.
any evidence of that. However, the
Yep.
DOJ had apparently sought the information, including names,
Yeah,
addresses,
that's new,
driver's
dude.
license numbers, and
But
social
I was
security
like, really,
numbers
guys?
of
Public
over 3 million
instruction? Can you
registered
make it
voters as
sound
part
any
of
more
President
work
Donald Trump's
campish?
March executive order
No, that's like straight out of
restricting
the Soviet
non-citizens
work
from
camps. Like,
registering to vote, which
like
again,
they
there's no
talk about
evidence
how
that
much
that's
they hate
something that's taking
communists and
place
different shit,
anyway.
but like they
But
sure love
the
that
judge
work
stepped in
you
and
know,
essentially blocked
propaganda.
the DOJ from accessing the information of the voters from the state. So her decision ended
Public
up getting
instruction.
criticized
What
by
does that
Assistant Attorney
mean?
General for Civil Rights,
Sorry, I
Harmeet
just I
Dillon.
saw that and I was like,
And the judge's decision was also later reversed by
I
the
guess.
state's Supreme Court. But the
This-
damage had already been done in the eyes of, Trump administration officials in addition
No,
to Trump
public
supporters.
instruction.
So in her ruling, Goodstein had stated that handing over
Education's
this
not
sort
even
of
in the
data
name
would
anymore?
cause immediate and irreparable
No,
damage
dude.
by
Wow,
violating
you
people's
guys
right to
are
privacy, something I actually agree with.
openly
But at the
anti-education.
time, Dylan, Harmeet Dillon, who was nominated
That's pretty far
by
out
Trump,
there, dude.
slammed
That's-
her ruling and posted on X that the Justice Department's
don't
civil
know.
rights will not
I get it.
stand
I get
for
it.
a
I don't like
state
them too.
court judge's hasty
Tired of smart
nullification of our
people.
federal
Tired of
voting
fucking
laws.
lippy
I will
smart
allow
people.
nothing to
Dumb,
stand in the
stupid.
way of our
Yeah, I get
mandate
it.
to maintain clean voter rolls. One citizen, one vote. Now, I want to be clear, even though I disagree
Yeah,
with
just
Dylan,
be
I don't
teaching
see
them
anything
to
wrong
keep
with
their
that
hands
post
to
in terms
themselves,
of
dude.
inciting violence or anything like that.
That's all.
And then Judge temporarily blocks South
Not
Carolina
murder
from
each
giving
other.
millions of voters data to DOJ. But even more recently,
Reading right, hopefully.
literally a
Yep.
day before this fire occurred, Stephen Miller, who is the deputy chief of staff, targeted federal judges in general who rule against Trump in a social media post. So he wrote the following: "The issue before is now before us. The issue before us now is very simple and clear. There is a large and growing movement of left-wing terrorism in the country. It is well organized and funded, and it is shielded by far-left Democrat judges, prosecutors, and attorneys general. The only remedy is to use legitimate state power to dismantle terrorism and terror
Hey, what the
networks."
fuck, man?
So obviously that type
Torino,
of rhetoric makes it
told you
appear
my
as
bad,
though
man.
judges
What the hell can I
who
say? I screwed you
rule
up.
against
Just
the
go
Trump
ahead and kill me
administration
then.
are essentially
Man, you ain't nothing
providing
but a fucking
cover
Yale
for
dealer
terrorists
anyway,
in
Torino.
the
Shut up and
country.
sit down.
And in regard
think I'm a
to
drug
this
dealer?
judge's ruling
You think you're a
against Trump,
crusader
essentially
for good?
attempting
Do
to
you
block
have
him from
any
accessing
idea what's going on? Any
the
idea
voter
whatsoever?
rolls.
Do you?
Let's talk about
Do
something
you?
that drives
Nah,
every
I pay as
business
little
owner
attention to things as
absolutely
possible.
crazy.
You fucking
Trying to hire the
smartass
right
with me.
people. It's like trying to find a needle in a
I work
haystack.
for a government
You post a job
It
and
is
you
not
flood it
important
with
which
resumes,
one.
but
I will
most of
try
them
not to
don't have the right
confuse you.
skills or experience.
Yes,
It's
when
a
we last
huge
met,
hassle, honestly.
was
But not
involved
with
in battling threats in Latin
ZipRecruiter.
America
Finds
by
amazing
any
candidates
means
for you, and they do it fast. And now you can try it
That
for
does not make me
free
a
at
drug dealer.
ZipRecruiter.com/TYT.
money that we raise,
Now here's why it
the
works.
friends that we
The
won
moment you
over
post your
have helped
job,
us
their smart
immeasurably
matching
in our
technology
overseas
gets to work. It's not just sitting there
Government
waiting for
agency.
people to find
Kids
it and
like you.
apply. It's actively
You expect
searching
heroes.
and identifying top qualified talent.
We're
that
fighting
fits
a
your
war
role.
out there.
It sends them your way, and then
I'll be a
it does
hero
the
and I'll
hard part of
lose.
the hiring
And
for
what do we
you.
have?
But
Communism
don't
in
worry.
Ohio.
You're still in full
People
control.
sharing.
If you find a
Nobody
candidate
buying
you like,
stuff. That kind of
ZipRecruiter allows
bullshit.
you to send a personalized invite
So
to
relax
apply message.
and listen.
It eliminates the waiting game and gets the
all
right
right.
people to engage
Listen.
with your job posting
I know what kind of
sooner
guy
rather
you
than
are.
later. So
I need a
ditch
guy
the
like
other
you
hiring sites and let
do things I
ZipRecruiter
can't
find
get
what
caught
you're
doing.
looking for.
Like what?
The needle in the haystack.
I
4
need
out of
you
5
to
employers
commandeer
who
a
post
truck.
on ZipRecruiter get a quality
rival
candidate
agency
within
with
the
a
first day.
confused social
Try it for
agenda.
free at the exclusive web
They got
address
things that we need.
ZipRecruiter.com/TYT.
Now, this is a two-man
Again,
job.
that's ZipRecruiter.com/TYT. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
There were people who have some pretty decent followings on social media posting all sorts of, in my opinion, violent things. So one user with over 11,000 followers replied, quote, "Rain holy hellfire onto these judges who interfere with the executive branch." Obviously not understanding how our system of government works, how we're supposed to have a system of checks and balances, so you don't have an executive branch that gets drunk on power and is never mitigated or checked by other branches of government, including the judicial branch. Now, the next day, hours before the fire, Stephen Miller accused another judge, U.S. District Judge Karen Emergut, of legal insurrection over her blocking the National Guard being deployed by the Trump administration to Portland. New York Congressman Daniel Goldman pressed Miller on the incident over the weekend, saying Trump, Stephen Miller, and MAGA have been doxing and threatening judges who rule against Trump, including Judge Goldstein. Today, someone committed arson. He shouldn't have said that because there's no evidence of that right now. But nonetheless, committed arson on the judge's home, severely injuring her husband and son. Will Trump speak out against the extreme right that did this? So that led to Stephen Miller getting really upset. And to be honest with you, Jay, I actually agree with getting upset. because you're kind of making claims that are unfounded at the moment. There is still no evidence confirming that this was a product of arson. And you're blaming this on the extreme right when there's no evidence supporting that claim. Like, don't do that. So I'll get to Stephen Miller's response to that in just a minute. But what do you make of all of this?
And you gonna hop aboard.
Yeah, so I'm
oh shit, you didn't mention that on the phone.
So
It'll be a walk in the park.
Look, it's logical to think that it might be someone who was egged on by the Stephen Miller Times Civil or right-winger harder to judge. Like when we didn't know who the Charlie Kirk shooter was, there was logic in saying that it might be someone on the left. But you have to add in, but we don't know because we literally didn't catch the guy in either case, right? So Goldman is being too presumptuous there. He's I'm not sure that's exactly right, but he's presuming too much there. So I agree with you on Harmeet Dillon too. So that line, I will allow nothing to stand in the way of our mandate to maintain clean voting. No, that's normal politics. Look, I don't want the kind of violent imagery. I don't want us being pitted against one another as enemies, etc. But it's a very common political saying, so I wouldn't worry about that one at all. But when you get to Stephen Miller, that's where we have the real problem. So this constant talk of calling the left terrorists. Now, the minute they start calling people internally terrorists, we're in a lot of trouble, okay? Because I don't mean the left wing, I mean the country. Because then we're going to call everybody terrorists, and terrorist is the most misused word in the English language, and it basically means someone I don't quite like. And so, but if they're a terrorist, you can murder them. So it's just the world's worst word. Used inside the country is an epic disaster. And then this whole talk of legal insurrection, like bring it down. That's so like they say, oh, when you criticize the right, oh, you're increasing the temperature, you got to bring down the temperature. And then they go around going, get terrorists, legal insurrection, right? No, that's crazy talk. And then when you go extra mile and you go, now these terrorists are being shielded by Democratic judges, you're almost putting in there, is someone going to do something about it? And
yeah,
so,
that's where I land on this, right? I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if you are going to demand that the left tone down its rhetoric, how about you take a good look and reassess the kind of communications coming out of the Trump administration, because it's winding people up, making people scared. And yes, I think it's encouraging people who might be unhinged to take matters in their own hands. You need to have agreement on both sides of the political aisle to do what's right and not smear the other side as dangerous or terrorists. And when it comes to judges, that's especially the case because here, I'm going to fast forward to graphic 9 here, where, these threats against judges have definitely been on the rise. Chief Judge for the District of Rhode Island, Jack McConnell, told NPR in August that his court has received more than 400 threatening voicemails, including several credible death threats. McConnell had issued a ruling blocking Trump's freeze on federal aid earlier this year. So every time a federal judge does his or her job and weighs in on something that Trump is doing and decides to rule against it, you have this angry response from Trump administration officials that winds people up and makes them think, oh, the judicial branch is the enemy.
Baby, no tears.
No, federal judges are supposed to do what federal judges do, which is weigh in on the legality or constitutionality of the actions being taken by the executive branch. And the executive branch has the right to appeal those decisions, as the Trump administration has been doing. And let's just be 100% real. The federal courts have passed down all sorts of decisions that I have hated, that I've loathed. I don't then come out and say, these people are defending terrorists and terrorism. I'm not going to put a target on their backs because I might not agree with their rulings, but this is how our system of government works. And if you're wondering just how often the federal courts have needed to weigh in on some of what Trump has been up to, as of October, Trump has issued over 300 executive orders, proclamations, and memoranda. Between May 1st and June 23rd, federal district courts blocked Trump's actions with temporary restraining orders or preliminary injunctions around 94% of the time. And that's according to data that was analyzed by Adam Bonica, an associate professor of political science at Stanford University, while the Supreme Court reversed those orders in close to 94% of its cases.
Yeah, Anna, to your point, I don't know that there's anybody in the country who dislikes a Supreme Court opinion more than I dislike Citizens United. So I think it destroyed our democracy, along with Bellotti and Buckley v. Vallejo, which were earlier Supreme Court decisions. But that doesn't mean we should go attack the Supreme Court like a bunch of weirdos. And by the way, that would be very un-American. So what do you do then? Well, first of all, okay, you lost a Supreme Court decision. It's called sad day for you. So then what you do is you fight back politically. So if you lose a Supreme Court decision, that one is very hard to overcome. All right, well then put your boots on and let's overcome it. And so the way you do that in that particular case is a constitutional amendment. So that's why I started Wolfpack, wolf-pack.com, now fightcorruption.us, right? So there is a way to do it, there's a pathway to do it, and we will eventually do it. But you handle it that way, not through weirdo anger and like, they're shielding terrorists, do something. No. Don't do that. Yeah, do something. Pass an amendment. Be an American. Fight back politically. Use our democracy. Lastly, because we're the fairest show in America, Stephen Miller did put in a line there for plausible deniability. Anna did read it too, but I'm going to highlight it again anyway. So after he got everybody all riled up about their shielding terrorists and et cetera, he did write in, the only remedy is to use legitimate state power to dismantle terrorism and terror networks, right? So first of all, the judges are not part of terror networks, but he did say the only remedy is legitimate state power. Since we're fair, I'm reiterating that.
Get a vehicle up now.
It's pretty evident from the recent data that in the last 6 months, there's been a huge shift on YouTube for material that's trans-related. I did that video a few weeks ago where I talked about the end game, and it really didn't get many views. In fact, as I said that week, it wasn't even the biggest video that I put up that week. The video that I did about tariffs got a lot more views. And put this in contrast with 6 months ago, my Enemy of the State video, it topped out at 180K views. Most of those were gotten in the first week. Yeah, my follow-up took him like 8 months between the two, 11,000 views, and it's pretty much stopped. But one of the things that's really different is you see on the suggested video list, there's nothing trans-related. It's all like science stuff, but there's no other trans-related videos. If I do a search for the most popular trans-related videos of the last few weeks, a lot of people have told me about this one, the real reason that they're really obsessed with trans people. I don't particularly like the look of this video. It's a lot of AI stuff in it. It's a very modern type of video, but the content, the actual writing of the video, I thought was very deep. But you can see this video, which is one more popular over the last few weeks, 178K views. So, I mean, yeah, did pretty well. This other one from a French documentary, it's pushing 31K views. But, you know, you look on the right-hand side for related videos, and trans person who detransitioned has 5.1 million views. And the other one here, we see on the right, transgender women are not real women, BBC documentary, 3.3 million views. So YouTube as a platform, they're really pushing the anti-trans videos. Pro-trans, it's like an order of magnitude or more, less. And this goes in with, you know, like this recent thing, a news article here. YouTube is settling with the administration, given a cash handout, $25 million. Yeah, it's to settle a lawsuit brought by the president over the company's 2021 decision to suspend his account in the wake of the January 6th attack.
Brand's trying to get views by covering more controversial topics.
Platforms have done.
But that's it. No, more creators, dude. You literally
for
your
blocking him for hate
boss is
speech
an
and
algorithm.
causing the riot and everything.
I mean, I
And
guess
this
it's
also
like
is that
making money
YouTube
and
in
anything
recent weeks
else,
has
and yet you're just
rescinded all
trying to
of
figure out
the
how
restrictions
you get
for all the
views, how you
rioters
keep
and all the people
views,
who
how
are
you create like.
pro-rioters. They've all gotten back on the platform,
That's
and
what she
their
calls it,
blocked
basically.
accounts have been restored.
Trying to bust,
And it also says here
bust
that
out
Meta's
before
settlement was
exposure.
$25 million
Anyways, different stuff.
cash, and X agreed to pay $10 million.
And
So
especially
yeah,
once
just
your channel
raking
starts
in all the
shrinking,
money from all the
or
people
it's
that had
plateaued.
blocked him for hate speech and for
She
causing the
talks about
riot.
even
And
if
all
you
that
have
stuff.
this many
Part of the
subscribers,
backlash, the unwritten
there's
part
really
of
only a
it,
few
is that
thousand
YouTube
people
is
that
also
watch your videos.
ceased to become the bully
That
pulpit
number's only going to go
for
down
anything
if you're not bringing in new
pro-trans.
people.
So it's not that
Yeah,
you
TV
can't
shows have a
say
lifespan.
pro-trans stuff on YouTube anymore.
Who watches a
But
TV
if
show their
you,
entire life?
it's not
Nobody
going to be
does.
pushed. YouTube is not going to spread it. It's not going to come up in feeds. You can scream as much as you want, but YouTube, they're
try
not
to stay
going to put
relevant.
you
And
in
she's
the
been on here
suggested
for
videos
years and
feed
years.
for saying anything pro-trans. Anti-trans,
So, but it
you'll
is
get
tough.
millions
Try
of
to keep your
views.
basically keep your
But
job as a
YouTube has
YouTuber.
very
And you're not one of those
very
crazy.
quietly
That's the
gone
deal.
MAGA
She's in that middle.
in the last weeks.
Like once
It's
you
not
get
just
so
about
big, I
reversing
think your channel
decisions
just
from
sustains. It
2021.
has millions
It's
and millions
about
of subscribers.
really kind of
so
going
it's-
all in and quietly.
People subscribe just because they
It's
see you have
fashionable
millions
to
of
be
subscribers. You know what I mean?
hateful,
Like,
and it's
gotta be
very
something
fashionable
worse.
right now to be anti-trans.
So,
if your bully pulpit is
but if
anti-trans,
you're one of those
you're rest
other,
assured that your
you know,
views will
under
be
a million
seen
subscribers
worldwide,
or half a
in the
million, I
millions
think it
probably,
gets really
right,
tough
millions of
to
views. Pro-trans,
stay relevant and make a living.
if you get 100,000, you're going to be on the top of the pyramid. But you're not going to be passed along, and there's not going to be any suggested
But yeah,
videos
she's
on
trans.
your
I
own
guess
side.
she's talking about.
You're not going to see a bunch
That's
of
one of the reasons
pro-trans
she's talking
suggested
about it.
videos. If you do a pro-trans video,
Try
it's
to
not
be a
going to
little
be like
bit
you got
more
other pro-trans videos. You're going to have the
controversial.
anti-trans videos on the side.
And that's
But
what
that's a
she's
new
talking about
thing.
now. It's like,
And
yeah,
so people, I
pro-trans
guess
shit won't get you
conservatives will
views.
say, well, this is the way it should be. If you
It's
do
got to be,
something
no, the Trump,
on this,
they're
it's gotta,
paying
you
for
got to
the
show
hate.
the anti-side. It's got to be the anti-side.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Like, yeah, dude, just like
I get it.
anti-Star Wars.
Free
Star
speech
Wars
and all that.
isn't. The
But, not
algorithm
equal free
it
speech.
pays, dude. Somebody
Definitely not
pays the
equal.
algorithm
And then
to
conservatives will
push
say,
certain.
payback's a bitch.
Yeah.
You banned us for January 6th, the patriotic vacation stay of patriots who were vacationing in the Capitol and tourists, who were peacefully walking around.
I would
and
just
being
argue, like,
patriots.
yeah, the trans
That's the
market
rewriting
is
of
small,
American
dude.
history. It used to take decades to
The
rewrite
people,
American history. Now
for
it just
every
takes
one
months or
trans
years
person,
before we
there's,
completely rewrite the actual history, and
My
now
bad.
it's completely different.
But yeah,
It's
there's
amazing.
10
You can't depend on
anti-trans.
people's
You know,
memory
like
because people don't remember anything anymore.
Yeah.
That's the
So
way
it's
it
like
is.
the
No more
I
bully
and I
pulpit
always
for
suspected
me.
like it's getting.
So yes, I can.
And that school thing was
ruin
weird. I don't
my
know how they
channel
did
and
that.
talk about things that are very critical to talk about with what's happening.
Try to do away
in
with
my
Title
community.
IX. That was crazy, dude. Yeah.
But very few people will hear about it. And that's the way YouTube
Oh,
wants
I
it.
did school like pushing it in, and then in the sports teams. That was I don't know how they did that.
The trans thing though, and really even
Have you ever been in a threesome?
it's the smallest people who
That's maybe it's a
really small portion.
small portion, man. When we're being serious and talking about it. So like even in schools when they're talking about, I think the amount of kids that you say are trans is way not true, dude.
That's like I can even
You take one kid from Wisconsin and you plaster it over the internet and you make it seem like
I can positively identify.
Turns out those
probably
ex-Blizzard
one
developers
child
are
in my
having
class.
quite a fight. But unfortunately for them, that fight is against the economy.
Oh.
So let's get into things.
That's probably about the right
relatively new
numbers,
game
dude.
that just sold
1%, 2%.
62,000
That's what I'm
copies.
saying.
That
like,
is not enough copies.
So I
to
don't know how
recoup
they
its
can
money.
make such
And
a
Mike
small
Morhaime, the
percentage
Blizzard co-founder,
have
who
such a
left to
huge
make
impact
games
on
free from
sports
corporate
and
interference.
but some people
now
think
had
no,
to do
that
with
was
that thing.
that was
He's
the
now
right.
had to announce layoffs in Dream
They
Games
did that on
Publishing Inc.
purpose And the fucking trans people should have known better than to go along with it. They should have known better than to try to normalize.
Warcraft designer turned Riot
They took
MMO
the
lead
bait.
Greg Street founded Fantastic
And then
Pixel
they
Castle.
got used, and now we get to counter it when they should have said, "No, dude, we're
Chris
a
Kalecki, a veteran Warcraft
subculture.
designer creating Notorious Studios.
We don't like.
And
We don't
those
want to
guys
be
are
beat
just the
up.
beginning.
We don't want
The
to be
whole
prosecuted.
made
But
by
like,
ex-Blizzard devs
really, you
kind
were
of
gonna go on the
became a
girls'
marketing
team, dude?
pitch. It was the promise of veteran talent finally free. Bobby Kotick, you know, free to create. And some of those people did find success.
Weird
Choreographed
shit
games
that
landed their
happens,
moment.
yeah.
Second Dinner, of course, coming from Ben Grove of
Or
Hearthstone
like,
fame.
who
They
is
kinda
it that
crushed it
makes
with
sure
Marvel's
there's
Snap.
never
Others
a
have not done so
negative
well.
portrayal
Imaginary Studio
of
went through
gay
layoffs
men
before they even launched.
in
The same
media?
happened to Lightforge Games.
How
And then,
the
most
fuck do you
recently,
do that,
Unverified
dude?
Games
There are
found some
millions of
battle
people
aces
involved.
less than
But
a
when
year
you think of
after
a serial
launch.
killer,
This is pretty rough. And you expect some
when's the last
failures
time
just
you
based
saw
on
like a
probabilities
fucking
alone. But Dreamhaven
bad
was
black
supposed
guy?
to
And
be
I don't mean
different.
ghetto
They had
guy,
Mike
but I mean like
Morhaime.
beat his
Morhaime's
fucking
are pretty
wife.
rich. They also had
Piece of
many of the
shit.
biggest names from Blizzard.
It's
And here we are
10,
today,
15, 20
recording this
years.
video. So let's get into it. You know what drives me kind of mad? Walking out of a video planning meeting with pages of scribbled notes that may as well be hieroglyphics. Half the action items missing, and by the time I decipher what I've written, I've kind of forgotten the context. And this is where today's sponsor, the Plug Note, has become essential. It's an AI note taker that's the size of a credit card, and it magnetically attaches to my phone. And quite simply, when I'm in a meeting, I just click to capture everything. And that means
Well, all it is
thinking about
the
taking
whites
notes, I am
mixed
actually
first.
present
That's what was
with
so
people.
racist
And using
about
the
it.
plot
Is
instead of my
like
phone means
you
no
guys
phone
this
battery
white
stuff, no
word, but then
storage
that's
warnings,
not
no
that was
call
from the Civil
interruptions,
War and all.
none of
But
that.
like,
And I
there's
get
no
pure,
such
nice,
thing as
focused
white
note
people. What
instructions.
the fuck
Now,
are you
after the
talking
meetings,
about?
God automatically
They
transcribes
don't
everything.
think they're
It
the
generates
same as
structured
me,
summaries of
dude.
action items that I can
They
share with
only
the
do
team.
that when
And the
there's a
Ask
bunch
Plug
of
function
black
they've got
people
is
around and they
brilliant. You
want
can
me to
actually query
fucking
across all of your
protect
meetings. As
them
an
to, you
example,
know
I
what I
could
mean?
say,
When they
what
need
did Jared
protection.
say about
Then all of a
the
sudden they're,
lore
oh,
timeline changes
but
in Warcraft
basically
Chronicle
all the
Volume 4?
whites mixed
And
first and now
people can
everyone
catch that.
else is
So basically,
mixing.
it's a second brain that remembers context. And privacy matters, obviously. Plug uses end-to-end encryption and it meets SOC 2, GDPR, and HIPAA standards.
It was
Your data stays yours.
50
The
years
device
ago.
itself
You
has
could
30
still
hours
find
of
people
non-stop
saying
recording with
Polish.
64 gigs of storage.
That
So it
shit's
easily
all
handles
gone,
my
dude.
entire week.
When's you might hear a white person say, "Oh, Italian or Irish,"
no time at all.
but
And
when's the
you can
last
check it
time
out
you
at
heard anyone say,
plug.ai/Balliol.
"Oh, I
Because when
have
you're doing
Czech,
important work with people, your
a
brain
little
should be
bit of
focused
Czech,
on them and on
Hungarian in me,
creativity,
and then some
not
like that
stenography.
shit's all
It's a
gone,
big,
dude."
big win. Back in May, we talked about Dreamhaven's fairly consumer-friendly approach. You see, their role-playing game, Sunderfolk,
But yeah,
used
then
the
but
free-to-share
that ain't even
model.
real.
The idea being that one person could buy the game and then four could play it, just like how you buy a board game to play with your friends. And at the time, we hoped this would help it grow and find a sustainable niche, even if that niche was small. It seems the niche was too small, and that hope is now kind of dashed because Bloomberg
Yeah, that's Puerto
reported the
Rico,
numbers.
dude. I'm
At
pretty
the end
sure
of
that's
August,
Brazil.
Mike Morhaime told staff
That's
that
Brazil.
Sunderfolk had sold just 62,000 copies.
But there's plenty of white people in
That's not the
Brazil
only bit of
still,
bad
and there's
news.
black
Their
people in
July
Brazil,
release, which was
and there's
Wild
whatever
Games,
there's
a
Indians in
single-phase
Brazil.
arena
There's still
style
pure blood
spaceship
Indians
game.
in Brazil,
Well, it only sold
and there's still
130,000
pure blood
copies. Now, for loads
Africans
of
that are.
games, 130,000
And I'm
copies is
sure
awesome,
there's still
but
white
obviously
people
not if you're
from
working
what
at Dreamhaven
Portugal
scale,
is
and
Brazil,
certainly
Portugal.
not if you're mostly doing
So,
it with
but yeah, they're all
American
fucking
talent, as opposed
mixed,
to the
dude. I
emerging
don't
trend
think
of
any
having
of
a
that
small
plays
core
down,
team
and it
and
might to a
outsourcing the
little
shit
bit.
out of everything that you
I'm
can.
sure some of the
You know,
white people
looking
are
at you,
racist
Space
against the
Marine 2,
black.
for
But
example.
I think
Wild
Brazil
Game even
in
had
general
cosmetics
is
and
not.
battle passes,
That shit
but
don't really play.
just look at the Steam numbers,
Like,
guys.
yeah, it's just a
They
personal
started
thing.
low,
That's
kept dropping, and Mike
so.
Morhaime's
Who
messaging
knows?
was fairly blunt. Here's the
But
quote.
yeah, we'll have to see.
Our monthly expenses are outpacing revenue.
Oh.
That's never what you want to hear your boss saying. And the new focus for the
I
company
think
is,
that's
quote,
half the shit, dude.
urgently
Is
reducing
that
costs.
the
It's also
Anglo-Saxon
never the thing you want to hear.
culture
And then
is
came
dying. It
admission.
died with
We
the
are
boomers.
committed to Dreamhaven
But yeah, my
surviving
mom
through
had a
this.
kid
Now,
with
that's
a
good for
Mexican
Dreamhaven.
guy.
That's good for
Your
those people
mom
at
did.
Dreamhaven.
And so
But
it was already.
that
it wasn't us that killed it. It was that was Woodstock. It died at Woodstock. But I think with Reagan, they've tried to keep the appearances alive, and with the Starbucks and the Karen fortresses and going out to the suburbs. They've tried to keep the Anglo baseball playing. Fucking that guy at the fucking Department of Defense that just told them they need to shave their beards, get their hair cut short, and get skinny.
They're not making
So it can
bad
look
games.
like a good English, but
problem
no,
is
it's.
actually
I think
bigger
that
than
shit's
that.
dying.
What they're doing is trying to survive in one of the
Yeah, they're
most
tripping.
hostile
They're,
versions of the games industry we
what are you gonna
have
replace it
ever
with?
seen. Remember our Silk Song
Nobody
video?
knows,
In
and
that, we
everybody's
talked about
flipping out.
developers doing everything right, but
Like,
still
your wife
failing.
left you,
And
dude.
Dreamhaven does actually fit that mold quite well.
No, the
You
boomers
have
are alive, and
small
when their
teams,
parents die,
clear
like, I don't.
scopes,
What do you,
dedicated
dude? Your wife
releases,
left
no
you?
egregious monetization, and they were making games in
No,
proven
all the
genres.
white guys have.
This is
How
not a
many of
studio
them
that
have family
failed to deliver
and
good video game
kids
content.
and?
People who played their games
So anyway, I don't know.
actually
What's
did like them. And obviously, that's quite the contrast with Frost Giant and Stormgate, which we also do have to talk about. Bloomberg says that they are potentially facing layoffs and revenue problems, which, to be honest, yeah, is completely expected.
Yep.
Look at the Steam scores, and we will actually cover Stormgate properly in another video soon. But Steam reviews
That's like
do show a
that
key
girl
difference
that
here.
walked up
Players are mixed
in the
Stormgate,
hallway
so
when I
maybe
was
it
getting
makes sense that
Sydney.
game hasn't hit.
Her daughter had a
Dreamhaven's
Kiss
games are unanimously
shirt on,
liked by people.
and she
It's
had
just there's not enough
tattoos
people playing them.
down
Here's the wider problem.
down both
These
her
companies
arms,
formed around
and
a
I
core idea
assumed
that
she was.
veterans and veterans could
Think
deliver
I.
great
That's
games,
why I
and
was
that
like,
because
I
those
assumed
games
she was
would be so
Mexican,
great, made by
but
these
then I was
veterans,
like,
that you
but
would
I
get
don't
scale,
think
and you would
because
get
her kid. I was like, no,
success.
I don't
But
think
what's
they're
happened with those
Mexican.
people is that the
So-
market has changed dramatically from
Yeah,
the
but
other
she's
fees over
she
just a few years. And this
heavy
isn't
metal.
really just about
So
new
that's what I
IP
mean.
or
Yeah, we're
independent
all
studios.
mixed,
I mean, look
dude.
at Expedition 33. That is a
Oh, well,
pitch
yeah.
of, developers
So yeah,
left
dude.
AAA to make a passion
Whether you
project,
like it or not,
actually
we're all
working
fucking
and
mixed.
still resonating, even without an established
So-
brand to help them stand out. I mean, that's clearly not an essential thing.
I'm telling
But
you,
what is
what
essential,
people won't talk about,
apparently,
I'm
is,
pretty sure.
standing out. One of the best
It's black
first-person
people
games
driving
ever.
this race.
Expedition 33 did that, but as we covered in this video about
No, because they're
the
afraid they're gonna go. They'll go
similar
extinct.
development
They're
backstory,
afraid.
shows
No one will want
not
it. You know
all
what I
of
mean, or
it. And
whatever.
we're
I
left in a
think they're
position where these
racist.
developers bet that their veteran status
Yeah,
would
they don't want that
help
white
them stand
stain.
out.
They don't want
hasn't really
white. They,
worked out.
fuck those
Now, what do
white
you think
people.
about
Fuck
demographics?
them. No,
Younger
those white.
players don't care about ex-Blizzard
Yeah,
credentials.
I'm telling you,
People
dude.
like
They
me
don't.
might, but not you.
They're
players.
driving that rate.
And meanwhile,
That
the
rate.
games
Fuck
press
that. That's
has
the
been
segregation
utterly
around
gutted.
here. It
Now,
ain't
I
by
know
law.
that for a
It
lot of
ain't
people that came off as a good thing. You know, those damn journals.
And not just
finally
that, they don't want them
got
evil
what's
white
due.
bitches in their family,
There's a
dude.
little bit of a side problem, though.
Come
There's
on, you
very
know what I'm
few
talking
people
about.
working in games press now. Like,
Or the
legitimately,
boy, anyway,
it is
yeah.
tiny. Now, it is the case. There's people like
They don't
me,
want
on YouTube and stuff.
that
But
shit.
it's not just that it's tiny.
But anyways,
a lot
no,
of those
they
people
want-
have got to chase news, and they've got to chase things like guides, because that's what brings in money for their lovely corporate owners. So that role of the press in finding interesting games, interesting development stories, and basically surfacing that to readers, that has kind of went down. Now, what is good is, YouTube, Twitch. Loads of people discover new games through creators there, which is great. But even with that, creators are drowning in new releases, and
There was a guy at Starbucks last night that served my coffee, or when I was at Bub Scout yesterday. Yeah,
publishers
and
are really
I was calling him a guy. I was like, "Thanks, man." And then when he handed me my coffee, I looked at it, and no, he was pretty cute. And he was pretty. I was like, "Oh, is that a girl?"
But some developers,
And I was like, "Well, I didn't say man." You know, I said it like,
containing
like army style, like unisex.
Fantastic.
I wasn't, but then I was like,
now they're making a
Just like
fantasy
I say,
MMO.
"Hey, guys."
There's direct lineage.
but then
to,
later
of
I
course,
saw him sitting
Greg's work
in the
on
lot, you know, on
Warcraft.
break or
Now,
something.
Matty's promised
I was like, no, I think it was a
$1 million in
guy,
funding.
but then I
Now
think it was probably a
reportedly
trans
lowering
guy
that
or
figure.
whatever.
Now, Natty's did deny this to Bloomberg.
I think that's
They
what I
said
just
the
think
budget
the gay
understanding
guys are
Bloomberg had
calling
was
themselves
inaccurate.
trans. That's all it
Here's
is.
what's strange.
Bottoms, the
Red Street
females, the
followed
like.
all the right trends with a small
Instead of
team
saying they're
and
gay,
heavy outsourcing of
they're just calling
cost-efficient
it
development.
trans.
So in theory,
And just
everything
like I
was being
think
done correctly.
Fran, if Fran's a
Yet, the contents
woman,
of
which
the
I
Bloomberg report
suspect,
are what they are.
but
And while Natty's may
instead of
deny that,
saying she's a
let's look at what
lesbian,
Natty's have been doing in general.
she's
You see, this
saying
happened right as the
trans.
company started their creator preview
Because she's saying
campaign.
I'm not gay.
And there's
'Cause
quite a
they
Natty
don't
pattern
think
of
they're
reducing
no,
overseas
they're not
investment
gay.
after
I'm not gay.
luring
I'm
developers
trans.
from secure positions. That may seem
No,
like
and
me
us
saying a
don't.
bunch
We
of
don't
words,
get it.
but
But yeah, it's
there's
not our
been
community.
a trend. It's happened with ex-BioWare studios as as well, where netties do appear to fund studios and then pull that funding really goddamn quick. And that's leading us into a dire place Because
that's
in the
loud.
ideal world, these people get their sort of veteran dev status by putting in the work. And then they go off and they do their own thing. And that's supposed to be the type of what you would call creative destruction that happens in work that drives innovation. Because that veteran dev, you know, they might be working in World of Warcraft, but maybe they don't like the direction it's going in. Maybe they think, you know what, I can actually do something really interesting. And that's how the incumbents of today get defeated by the
And then she slept a little bit on the way to school, I think, but then she woke right up when we got there.
What's happened is a lot of those veterans have left, but then their companies have crashed and burned. And that's all happened whilst the games industry is in an investment drought. Now, at the same time, and at the other end of the scale, funding for indies and funding for AA projects is, by all accounts, at a real low point. And that basically means we're really in a pickle here. And not just in a way where a few games may be disappointing. I mean this in a way where the actual industry is becoming way less healthy. And the idea that, you know, the rug can be pulled before a game can even find its audience is spooky, it's depressing, but the risk is kind of simple. Because by the time these games release, the market might not care. And we have so many examples of the market not caring. Because what are most people doing?
I was telling Bubs about that. There's
Roblox. They're playing the same 10 games that they've been mostly playing for the last 10 years.
Support, like musicians or different shit.
To back that point up. People buying new games isn't as normal as it used to be. That means the games industry is changing. And what we're left with today is, I think, not what those Blizzard veterans
kind of sucks. And say,
they
yeah,
would be
there's
dealing
people on
with
YouTube
when
like
they
I
decide
really
to go
like,
off to new
I want to
pastures,
support.
find new funding,
I just
try to do
can't
some
think through a
cool
video,
shit.
man.
So, Dreamhaven are doing layoffs. Frostgiant are probably going to have layoffs as well. There are other stories of, you know, the ex-Blizzard devs haven't gone great. There's loads of similar stories coming from ex-BioWare developers, and I could go on and on and on
But yeah,
through this
just
video.
something, I don't know
And what it all
is,
does is
dude.
it builds in
I
something
don't
that
know a
we've
single thing this
discussed
guy has
earlier
said.
this year on this channel. That
I
there
haven't
is
been
no single games
specifically picked,
industry
but other
anymore.
shit you can
Not like
listen
there
to in the
was 10 or
background
15 years
and
ago.
get something.
In indie or AA spaces, audiences
I don't know
can
why other
exist to
people
support
just-
those games. And I think me and my team, and probably the audience of this channel,
Yeah,
are
exactly.
actually in that
And I think
indie,
he's just
AA, and a bit of
monotone, or
AAA
he's
space.
not
We're part of that
setting
audience.
things up in
We're
little
comparatively
groups
small.
for you to.
Expedition 33 could win Game of the Year.
It
might
sounds like
sell
he's reading off a
4.4
piece of
million
paper.
copies if it's the most
That's
successful
why
game of its type.
me and Joseph were
Most
just
indies or
talking about
AAAs
that.
won't
They're
sell
speeches.
half of
That's
that.
why you don't
They'll
write
sell a
them all the
tenth
way
of
out,
that.
memorize
Expectations have to drop.
And
New
they do
studios
index
need
cards, and then
smaller
you kinda-
budgets. They need different plans
Yeah,
for
he's
today's
reading off
market.
a script.
And here's the tragedy.
Well, then
3
he
to 5
just
years ago,
reads it.
these ex-Blizzard developers started making games
He's not
for a
acting
different industry, one that
Just
wouldn't
reading
really
off the
exist
teleprompter.
whenever their games released. And the hope for them is that they can course correct without losing all
So there's
of their
no
experience.
weird.
Make
Yeah,
no
when
mistake,
you
they
don't
lose
do
much of
that,
it.
you just group
Hopefully
shit. Yeah,
not
you just.
all. And I say hopefully because, frankly, we cannot afford to lose
Can't you
these
tell?
veterans.
Just read.
Not
He writes a
permanently.
script.
The
And he
games
gets in front of
industry
the
and
camera,
games
he
as a
just reads
medium
it.
actually needs people with experience. The problem we faced is that the industry is doing an awful job at supporting and fostering that experience. And yeah, that might suck for
No,
them.
it just-
but who
it's
it also
hard to
sucks
follow.
for you. So it means you
that's
won't
what-
get as good games as you otherwise could. Because we're in a world where good games like Sonderford or perhaps Wildgate simply can't get cut through, can't get the sales they need, can't get the money they need to support their ongoing development. And if even Blizzard veterans, with the backer of Blizzard's co-founder, all the networking, all the support, all of those like little soft things that someone accrues over a long career, if even those people with that support releasing good games can't make the numbers work, what does that mean for the rest of us? That's the thing.
Yeah, well, it's the
Now, this
straight
sort of thing is
difference between someone
important to you,
just
like
talking
the state
to
of the
you.
industry that actually produces the
How
games
is that
that
so
we play.
different?
I don't
It's-
mean this
it's
from a
night and
purely
day
altruistic
between someone
perspective. I mean
going
this
up
even
and
from a
reading off
self-interested one.
teleprompter,
You want a healthy industry
or
so that you
reading
can
a-
have more
a
fun video games to
memorized-
play. If you want to
and then
really
someone
understand
talking
that,
to you
check
about
out this video on
something.
Silksong.
It's
I can
fucking
promise
night
you,
and day.
it's not a glazing session. It is about how unique that game's circumstances are. And frankly, it's
And
a
I think
hell
this
of a
guy's
story.
actually trying to voice act too, I think.
Yeah.
And not, because he's, of course, he's on YouTube, but then, like, I don't know, it's just a weird. I can't tell you a single thing he said. Yep.
The best part about winning
it's not building up to crescendo.
is that everything just sort
stuff or
of
something.
works.
You
Get
know,
me into my command center, Alex.
well, yeah, listen to
Showtime.
Doc talk. Well, it's not the same, but yeah, he just, that's the difference in those dudes, yeah. Yep.
Or whatever.
You can tell.
Let's go! Oh, champs. What is wrong with the camera? What's wrong with your smile? I'm really good at this game, champs. Really good. There's no way? You don't think so? Watch this. Oh, I had it! I had it! Back it up. Beautiful step. That's a beautiful step, champs. Just so far, unbelievable. No fucking way! No way! Get up. Get
How
up.
do I get on
I know
that
you
freeway
can. Get in there. Stick your face
without
underwater.
going
Right there.
all the way?
Right there. Up, 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 up,
Is that why this is here, so I can cheat?
I'm jumping on this thing and I'm immediately getting off. You'll see what I mean. Watch this. Come on, I got it.
Aha, there we go. Now we
There's the
found
mud
it.
pit.
All right.
Oh man, if we fell down that thing, man, that'd be an uninstall.
That
No
was
way.
a lie.
Holy shit. Are we on the last? Is this it? Take a look. There's the end. I told you today's gonna be a quick day. We're on the right path. We're getting the right cutscene.
Well, look what the cat dragged.
It don't matter. Game's over with.
It's all the people
That's the end of the fucking game, right? Why are we still talking?
Ah, the aerial borealis. You see it? See the aerial borealis? There's that aerial borealis again. It's okay, but like, I'm not upset because look, it slides you right over here, right into the soft padding, and it says this is the way. No, we're not helping you out. Get up! Get up! Oh, Jim, who's Jim? Help! Jimmy, Jim. Oh, help! Alex is not here. He's traveling for a ping pong tournament over the weekend. Hence the technical issues that have been presented to us. Looks like we're going up the train track. How about up on top of the chair? Yes. Oh, God. I'm so good. I'm so good. I'm just so good. The music, everything. There you go. And then... oh, God, no!
Roger
Oh.
that, big monkey. I got a
Okay, we're gonna
13-6
double slide.
fat
We're gonna double
vulture.
slide
Need
cut.
to acquire a drowning baby. Over.
There it is.
What?
Double
In
slide
15
cut.
by the fat
And then
moon.
the
Break
other
your
angle.
heart. Over and out.
Easy,
Carl,
easy,
I need you to do me a
easy,
favor.
Yeah, I'll
easy,
do you a
fat
proper
boy.
injury, man. What you knowing about my brother?
Relax. He's in prison upstate. D-Wing. Cell 13.
Dun,
To the left, I got a child
Keep
killer who
going,
wants to
man.
rip his throat out.
Get up! Don't you dare
To the
go-
right of
oh,
him, I got a
no.
white
Oh, no,
supremacist
no.
who wants to
Whoa,
eat his
whoa,
heart.
Whoa,
Precisely.
whoa.
Now don't worry.
Get up. Oh.
Tenpenny and Pulaski
This is
are
driving me
relatively
nuts.
benign.
This is
unless,
driving me
of course,
nuts.
you're a family member of Officer Pendlebury.
What are we reaching back?
To expose them,
Oh,
but
no.
you do know.
Oh, no. What are we gonna do here, John?
Why am I playing
Hey,
this
man,
uh,
game
how you
again?
know all this
Anybody-
stuff, man?
Can
I
anybody
want
tell
you
me?
to stop
Can anybody tell me
You
why
just
I'm
don't
playing
understand.
this game?
Oh, baby.
Don't you
It's all white knights and
No.
We have to make decisions, kid. You know, I try to set bad people on other bad people, and sometimes I let good guys die. He's your brother, but to me, he's just collateral. It's a very delicate decision. over here, you got all the scumbags inside the country. And over here, you got all the scumbags outside the country.
Is that right? Then let's go up
And me and my colleagues,
Huh? In world record fashion. Let's go up
keep the government in work. Which
What?
reminds me, come here.
What what is it doing?
I need you to
Why
head
isn't
over
my
here
foot
and fuck the
grabbing
outside.
It's not giving me the fucking
Okay,
right
let off the
control that I
flare.
want.
We got some precious cargo. These guys.
Hey, hold up. What about my brother and all that shit you talking
Hey, don't worry. Sweet,
This is
just
the problem. Look at
fine.
this leg starts to get
He
like
gets
now I have
touched.
no way of getting it where I want it to go.
A prison guard goes home and finds that his
Like I
wife
have
and kid
no
have been murdered.
will not do
Everything's
what it
under
should
control.
do.
We'll talk later. No.
I love my job. I love playing video games every day.
Woo! Come on, baby! I feel like since they're putting these plants here in these trees, that's like a sign. Like, keep going this way. Bring me back my music again.
No, baby, not right now. It'll turn the TV off.
Let's take a look around. Why you at the tippity top but not me?
You're okay,
Hold
but
on,
yeah,
we'll get
baby,
there.
it's time for TV to go off.
Get up! Start rolling the credits, Tips. The camera got away from us, and that's okay. Idiot! Get up, man! It's your finish line. Everyone's watching you.
And I feel like I'm trying, and I said I'm living like fine, and I know I'm trying. I got my tail tonight, bitch ass motherfucker. I ain't gonna ever stop on a bitch ass motherfucker. I ain't gonna ever stop on a bitch ass motherfucker.
Here's the edge of the song. Huh? Oh, baby, 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 baby. There it is. Oh, yeah!
Who is it?
It's Nate.
Oh, hey, Nate.
Hey.
It's good to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Mom. Tell Mom on the way.
Still headed to the top.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Getting. I'm
Your
gonna
dad
go
is
right
on
there
the
now. Okay.
Torino,
that's a good-
where you
that's
at?
good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Good night.
That's the end of the fucking game, isn't it?
Get to that drop zone and wait
This is that's the end of the game. Did we beat it? 13 hours and 40 minutes? We beat the game. Ladies and gentlemen, check out the path. Look at the path. Look at it. Look at this path. Then we kind of struggled there. We didn't know because you guys couldn't figure it out, right? You go up that way, go up that way. There, and then we took a left-hand turn, and then go this way, Doc. And then I just was confused, and I kept on trying to go up the river. You kept on, go back into the river, Doc. Okay? And then we're backtracking. Now we're back to square one.
Like he's talking about you.
Right? Because of you idiots. Tell me where to go.
No, he's got a special skill. Not.
Jeez, got attacked by a stellar bear. Then we decided, you know what? Maybe the better path is to fucking go back down. And
That's what I told Joseph. You should see. That's why I started halfway.
On the outside of the map.
That's a weird thing. It's AI, bro.
Can't figure out nothing.
Blame it on the AI.
Pilot said he's got trouble. 2 agency choppers coming in on an intercept. Can you see them?
Yeah.
Shoot them down! Protect the cargo
How
at
many
all
times
costs.
did we go down that mud path? It had to have been
Time
5,
for all
6 times. There's 4. And we almost uninstalled right there. But the moral of the story is, kids, you just don't give
How
up.
am I missing these things?
You gotta attack. You gotta squeeze. You gotta suffocate. You could never give up. You're reminded.
Am I hitting that thing at all?
Way better.
Yeah.
To every single way imaginable. Reminder. Whatever you're doing, whoever you're dealing with the situation. Give me that. And be the better person.
Where's that at?
What you're about. Violence. Speed. Momentum. This is the Champions Club. Ladies and gentlemen, we never quit.
Oh, that's where they came from.
Did we beat it? What the fuck is going on? No, there's no fucking leg. I can't do this. Get up. Get up. Get up. Get up. Get up. Get up. Me? I'm all natural. Outside of the steroids? Oh shit. What is on my fucking camera right now? Whoa, 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 whoa. I don't know where the fuck we're going. Oh no!
Yo completo!
I hate this game. I really do. I hate this game.
Oh, the aerial
I ain't
bullet
stopping,
rails.
punk.
This is driving me nuts!
No, I needed.
It's not the top. That is the top.
You want a fair one,
Top of the
asshole?
mountain. Go for a walk. What? What am I playing? Yes, path behind takes you to climb for true indie doc. Alright, you guys are bullshitting me. I've got 14 hours logged into this game. I know what's a path and what's not. Trust me.
Wow.
Listen, you cannot get up.
You out your mind,
You cannot
moron?
get up.
I'm trying. Here, I'm trying. Oh.
Sorry.
No, I'm going. Yep. Same way. Just it all works together.
Maybe this is a path. Hey, you want the true ending, as they say? Then you're gonna get the true ending. There's no way. This has to be the
What's the
end
name
of
of
the
you
game.
doing?
We are about halfway up.
Okay. No, my hands are not my own. I can honestly say that at this point. I'm not sure what's
We're not going
happening.
off the side though. That's guaranteed. We're not going off the side. Look at. Stop right there. Oh, just a pocket. Just a pocket. Beautiful. Easy to get out of.
Oh God.
Longing for
No, I gotta
lazy
go.
summer days
You giving me the
in Santorini
heebie-jeebies,
or
man.
a dreamy
I gotta
drive
go.
down the Blue Ridge Parkway in the fall? With an annual plan from Allianz Travel Insurance, you can choose both. Be ready to go year-round
I
whenever
gotta go. I
Wanderlust
gotta go. I
strikes.
gotta go. I gotta go. Gotta go.
Hey, folks.
Gotta
Dogbert
go. Gotta
says
go.
that
Gotta
you
go.
should stay in your
Ah.
own lane. You should stick to what you know. And that is so that Dogbert can go into whatever lane he wants to go into. Dogbert is relevant. Talk about him in a minute. Let's get to some promos first. Keys to Prolific Creativity. This
All right.
is my
I'm
manual
just gonna leave it on
creative
pause.
process.
I'll be
Written
right
from the
back.
perspective of a musician. The guitars are not just for show, as well as a novelist, having written in multiple genres and produced a whole lot of YouTube videos. This is how I get those things done, and my mindset and my approach to doing all of that. You can get it on Amazon, or you can get it as part of the Patreon benefits down below. You also get a free book every month, sometimes more. I gave out a bunch last month. So King Leopard, that is also available. It will be blue if you get the new hardback or the new paperback, but it's the same content. Mighty Fantasy Tome. Check that out. Classic fantasy. Should you stick to your own lane? I obviously didn't. I have a music degree and I write books. So I did not stay in my own lane. And so if you've ever gotten the advice to stay in your own lane, I happen to think that's bad advice. And I'm not alone there. I think it's actually some of the worst advice that you can possibly take to heart. Dogbert. Dogbert is drawn by Scott Adams. Scott Adams draws the Dilbert comic strip. Chances are you don't know about Scott Adams from drawing the Dilbert comic strip. You know him from something else that he's done, and that's because he did not take this advice to heart either. He didn't take it to heart when he made the Dilbert comic strip. He wasn't an artist. He wasn't a comic artist. He wasn't like a Bill Watterson. He was a corporate guy, and he wanted to make a comic strip about corporate life, and it made a huge impact. He probably could have just kept doing that forever. I know that it had already made a big impact on corporate culture back in the 90s because I have Intel magazines that have Dilbert parodies from like 1997. So it had already made a big impact in the 90s. He probably could have kept doing that forever. He didn't. He branched out. He did novels. He did other kinds of books. I remember he came out with a book called Stick to Drawing Comics, Monkey Brain, which is about the topic of this video, right? This was a thing that people would say to him whenever he would write blog articles about whatever weird thing was on his mind. You may know Scott from the meme of him drinking the coffee after talking about some statistical things, right? You may know about him talking about persuasion. You may know him from Twitter. He is very ill, and he continues to draw Dilbert, which means he's got a pretty good process for how that works. Terminally ill. But he's made a big enough impact to get a call from the president about the president trying to find a way to help him get treatment for his prostate cancer, not the good kind, according to him. So he did not stick to his lane, and chances are you know of who he is because he didn't stay in his lane. He didn't stay in his lane when he made the Dilbert comic, and he didn't stay in his lane after he became successful with the Dilbert comic. He had a career as a public speaker. He had a career in YouTube, right? He's done so many different things. So one of the worst pieces of advice you can take to heart is stay in your lane. Most of the time, though, it's not, even when it's well-meaning, it's bad advice. But most of the time, it's just a piece of sophistry. It's a non-argument. It's trying to get somebody to shut up without having to refute anything they've said. And I think it works on a lot of normal people because they perceive strangers online as real people, even though the opinion of strangers has zero impact on their life and shouldn't be taken too seriously. Stay in your lane. Stop saying what you're saying. I don't like saying what you're saying. Some cases, people are so disconnected from what they're even talking about with their lane that they'll tell people that they should stay in their own lane. And it's like, you need to stop talking about games. And it's like a major game developer saying that. It's like, I was the producer of this video game. What do you mean I'm a tourist? I made the games you play, right? The opposite of a tourist. But people use that to try to get people to shut up. The main thing I really want to talk about, though, is that it's not good advice. You should branch out. I have a music degree. The guitars are not just for show, okay? I was a performer on classical guitar. There's no classical guitars on my wall, right? So I play mostly electric guitar now. But I am a writer, and I write more than just fantasy. I write horror. I write science fiction. I write nonfiction. I write literary fiction. You can get Afterglow. I don't know where it is. That's a literary fiction book.
I write in a lot of different genres. I don't stick to my lane. I branch out. Because the fact is, if you stick to your lane, you are automatically going to be imposing a limit upon yourself. And you're never going to know what your outer limits are unless you are exploring them and seeing what's out there. Okay. If I decided I'm only going to write in one micro genre on Amazon, that micro genre might generate 1,000 sales for you, and you might be able to get like a little bit of income from that, and it might be very consistent, but you're not going to have the opportunity to get a whole lot more than that unless you take some risks and get outside of that lane, right? You're kind of playing the lottery every time that you release a book as far as whether people are going to connect with it or not. I have had books that are really popular and have sold thousands upon thousands of copies, and I have ones that I pretty much know ahead of time are not going to be big sellers, and it's okay. But you never know. I've had people give me feedback on some of my worst selling books that it's their favorite book of mine, and it's one of their favorite books that they've read. So you just never know how something's really going to hit. And my decision to take up writing was really, do I have to just do what I've done forever? I was a classical guitarist for like 10 years. Is this what I am? Is this what I have to do? Is this what I have to do forever? And I came to the conclusion that that was not the case, that I could do whatever I wanted to do, and I could be whoever I wanted to be, and I could change those things if I wanted to change them. And I could do more than one thing. I could be good at more than one thing. I could be a writer and a musician. I could be an artist too. I could be any of these things, and I knew the path towards achieving them. In fact, I talk about it in this book, Keys to Prolific Creativity. The path to being those things is to do them. And by doing them, you gain practice at them. How did I get good at just talking into a camera? No script. I don't do scripts, guys. People are always like, yeah, time to script and edit this. There's no edits. Do you see any edits? There's no edits. There's no script. I just talk. Why am I good at this? I have a lot of practice. I've done it like 1,000 times. And before that, I was a lecturer, right? I've done the talking thing a lot. And eventually you get pretty good at it by practicing. So I knew that I could get good at writing by practicing and by executing the process that I had started to learn. Really, it took me 10 years to adequately, fully learn a creative process for playing music. I know that sounds crazy. Like, how did you not figure that out? If you were making money as a classical guitarist, how did you not have it figured out? Well, I knew how to practice and get a piece to performance, but I didn't know like how to do really long-term stuff, like manage my career over the long term, like manage my repertoire or my compositional stuff or learning new skills. I had settled into just grinding out repertoire for a long time, and I became very dissatisfied with that, and I had to reevaluate that. I learned a lot from bodybuilding. I talk about it in here. It's the same process, right? You show up to the gym every day, your body becomes whatever you do to it every single day, right? You become what you do. You are not some internal being that's set in stone and that's all that you are. In fact, this is related to, and Scott Adams, I believe, has said this as well, some of the worst advice you can ever take is to be yourself. Why is this bad advice? First of all, you have to think about what yourself is. This has built into it an assumption that you just are something internally that can't ever be changed or fixed. It can't ever be changed. It can't ever be altered. Whatever's broken about you will be broken forever. And there's also like a Gnostic element. Like you have some internal gnosis of who and what you are that is going to determine what you ought to do. This argument goes through lots of things in our culture, which we don't need to get into in this video, but I'm sure you can think of more than a couple of big topic issues that come from the thing that I am this thing and that makes me have to do a thing outside of me, right? You aren't born liking anime. So if you have a core component of your identity that is liking anime and you need other people around you to like anime, you may find that it's a rather lonely existence. You say, well, this is who I am. Who I am is an anime fan. I'm an otaku. No, you're not. Well, you are because that's what you do, but you can change that. You can change about what you talk about with others. You can change what you consume and what you think about. lots of the things that you think of as set in stone for yourself are changeable, and they're especially changeable over time. This isn't to say that like your preferences are always up to you, or that personality can be altered at a whim. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not a big believer in the blank slate at all, especially now that I have children. I'm much less of a believer in the blank slate. But if you have an eternal desire to do something, then you can do that. It's not too late to change the path you're on, right? That's a Led Zeppelin thing. So I want to communicate that to you. If you are like, man, I really want to be an artist. I wish I could do art. Well, go do it. Pick up a pencil and practice and learn how to do it. I want to be a writer. Okay, what does that mean? It means that you need to be writing. Right? Open up the word processor. Start writing. Start coming up with some stories. Start doing it. And by doing it, you're going to learn the best way that you know how to do it and the way that you're able to complete the projects. And I have all that in this book. Okay, a lot of that stuff's in this book. But the main thing is that you can do that. You can change what you do, and you can change what you are. So I say, like, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a writer, I'm a musician, and those are three things that I do. And not all of them I did forever. Right? I wasn't born a musician. I was born and I did like band and choir, and then I picked up guitar, and then eventually I was a music major, and then I was doing it. Then I was a musician, and I was performing, and I was gigging and doing that stuff. And the same thing with writing is like I liked to write. I wanted to write. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to make my stories. I started writing the stories, and eventually I have all of these books that have been published, a whole bunch of them. You can find them all on Amazon. There's a gaggle of them. And I'm very proud of them. And what I'm thinking about sort of as the next thing here is there's always another thing that you can do, right? So if I don't want to be a writer anymore, I can stop doing that. Or if I want to be a writer of a different medium, I can just change that medium. I can be a video game writer by making a video game. I could be a game dev. How do you become a game dev? Well, you just do it. Right? You decide, I'm going to learn how to do it, and you just start trying to do a game, and you'll pick up skills as you go along the way, and you can dedicate yourself to learning the correct coding to do it, and the correct workflow. But once you have a good creative process down, a way to manage your time and manage your projects and fulfill your vision, it's not that hard to switch mediums. It's not that hard to change something about yourself and be something different, be a different kind of artist, because you just take your lessons that you learned in that other area and just apply them to this new area. And like I said, I mentioned bodybuilding. If you start by knowing how to go to the gym every day, then you can do anything. If you can manage your diet and your exercise routine, then that's just going to overflow into everything. Of course, you can manage a work routine. You go to the gym for 45 minutes a day, or you can sit down at your computer for 45 minutes a day and work, or try to work. And eventually you'll figure out how to work if you just keep trying. Just like how the first day you go in the gym, you have no clue what you're doing. And then years later, it's just automatic. It's easy. It's a thing you do. It's a habit. And that can drive a lot. Now, for me, what drives a lot about what I do is not the process. The process is like the foundation. This is the road that you travel to get where you're going. But you have to decide where you're going. So when I think about a book, when I think about designing a book, I'm not just writing until a book appears. I plan the book. I think about the book. I think about how the book relates to my other books. And then I think about my career. Like, what's the big thing that I'm doing with my books? Where am I going with them? Those sorts of things. So having that vision of what you are imagining, where you're going, that's going to help you stay on the road. Because anytime you get kind of bogged down in the process, you just stop and, okay, I see again where I'm going, and I'm achieving that vision. And you can make an evaluation. Is this helping me achieve that vision? And if it's not, whoa, you can stop and fix that. You can change the road that you're on and do something different. And if you get to where you're going and you don't want to stay there, you can do something different, right? Like I said, Scott Adams, he could have kept doing Dilbert for life. In fact, I think he still does it. He's still drawing comics, even as a terminally ill person. He can do a lot of things, but he decided at some point he wanted to do more than that, and he was able to do it. So you can too. And I think if you are willing to get outside of your lane and try these new things and experience these new things, I think you will open yourself up to a lot more success and a lot more fulfillment too, because you'll be able to get around the limits that you previously had. Because the fact is, whatever you achieve, that starts to become like your set point. And I talked about this in another video, right? It's like, I don't get a dopamine hit from going on Facebook because 2 comments from my high school friends doesn't like excite me, right? Where when I make a YouTube video, like my dopamine threshold's like 5,000 views. If I get 5,000 views, I get enough interaction, I get enough attention that it feels good. So you could kind of set there, but 5,000 views is not a lot in the grand scheme of things. So if I wanted to get more than that, then it'd really be about, okay, I can change what I do on YouTube. I can be a different kind of YouTuber. I'm talking about creative productivity here, but I can talk about something else. I can talk about drama and be a drama YouTuber if I want to be, or I can be a gaming YouTuber and just change what you're doing and do that other thing. So that's something that I think about now, like with YouTube, is like, what do I want to do? Do I want to do something different? I don't have an answer right now, but I know a lot of you already are interested in, creativity and books and music and that kind of stuff. And so I want to give you this piece of life advice. Maybe you're new and you haven't ever had someone tell you that to stay in your lane and write what you know is like some of the worst advice. So, by the way, for writers, write what you know is like the worst advice anyone can ever give you. Actually, that's not true. I think I said the worst advice was someone was like, you need to write your characters so that you don't know what gender they are, so people can project onto it whatever gender they happen to be. And I'm like, that's terrible because gender's a deep part of our identity. That would be like writing a character with no identity. Like it would just be weird. It'd be like an actual blank slate. It'd be an interesting postmodern sort of approach to writing, but not one that I would write for genre fiction, right? That was my point. So, but one of the worst things that you could take to heart is that you should write what you know, because chances are if you're a writer or anyone, right? Most people have not had such an adventurous life that they can write a book about the adventures that they've had and write many books about their adventures, right? We're not Conan. Like Robert E. Howard did not live a super adventurous life, but he wrote great adventure stories because he knew how to write good adventure stories. Did Shakespeare have a very adventurous life? No, he had a pretty basic, boring, productive life, and one that really made a mark on the ages through its variety and its depth, right? So as a writer, did he know about Julius Caesar? Well, he had to know enough about history to write the tragedy of Julius Caesar. And the thing is, if you don't know something, you can learn it. I wrote a samurai novel. Where is it? It's around here somewhere. I don't know. Muramasa Blood Drinker. Okay, it takes place in feudal Japan. It's like a horror mystery story in feudal Japan. Really interesting, crosses a lot of genre, and it's actually what kind of started me on the independent publishing crusade. Was like, no one would publish this because it doesn't fit into any pigeonhole. It's a weird book, and but I wanted it to exist, and I wanted people to have the opportunity to
I don't remember if GTA pauses or not.
I had to learn. I knew about feudal Japan.
Well, it's about that generation where they don't.
But I had to
even
learn
if you
more
go into the pause menu, they don't really
a lot
pause.
Of new things about how swords were made, about
no
how
way.
people
I'm gonna
dressed,
die
how they
if I take
acted,
that helicopter.
in the late Muromachi period, kind of going into the Sugoku period, which is like this big. Everybody wants to like do this in Goku period stuff, Warring States period, but all of those things, all the things about the culture from that time are different from what they are even in the 18th century. You have so much that's different about that time. So to go back there and write it and kind of approach it as like a Japanese fantasy novel, but with the knowledge that I learned about that culture. Yeah. Did I need to be an expert on Japanese history to write the book? No. I was able to utilize a lot of the expertise of others to do the research necessary to write the fantastical book that I had in mind. And I didn't write it as purposefully historically accurate, but that's often one of the feedback things that I get from this is like, this isn't like a dumb Hollywood movie. It's like,
always have like
this
a
feels more like Japan, and I still consider it a fantasy book, but I get that, right?
I haven't played a lot of the other ones.
It is. You can go learn the things that you don't know.
I bet you Vice City
don't stick to
probably
writing
does
what you know. Write the things that you imagine. Science fiction writers
and I like this book.
are writing their imagination. They're not writing the things they know. They're writing the things they imagine. And this is the same with fantasy writers or any writer. A detective story. If you're writing a hard
look.
mystery,
I mean, you could call it a Doom buggy, but I
detective.
think it's called a rail because basically, like, see, that's a little Doom buggy. See it?
You're right.
That's more traditional, but it's literally literally a
So when
motor
you're
on a
writing
rail
fiction, do
on
not worry about
pipes
like
with
write what you
steering
know.
in front.
It's the same thing. If you want to write about something that you don't know, then you can go learn that thing. You can make it a thing that you know. You can change it. Okay. So that's all I have to say about that. Thank you for watching this video. Yes, King Leper is out now. You can grab it, and I do appreciate any reviews on Amazon. Have a great one, and I'll see you all next time.
But if I don't play the game when I listen to the podcast, then I can re-listen to my gameplay and listen to the
Eisenhower
podcast.
Presidential Library making headlines today, and that's the head of the library has resigned over a spat with the White House, sparring over a historic sword. CBS News is reporting that the White House wanted a sword out of the library's collection to give to King Charles last month during his President Trump's visit to the UK. Well, the head of the library, Todd Arrington, resisted and later stepped down. A replica was given instead. President Dwight D. Eisenhower possessed a number of notable swords. In an interview with CBS News, Arrington said he was told Monday to, quote, resign or be fired. But officials are telling CBS News the White House played no role in the historian's exit.
Is about the history of violence in cinema and how it's gotten worse and worse and worse by decades. And I went through the history and spent days just plotting it all out and specific movies that would each move the violence forward a little bit more than the last one. It's fascinating when you go through it. But one of the arguments I'm making in that chapter
what's between our knuckles and stuff? Collagen?
And we need to pull the reins in on it now because some of the
but what's in your cartilage? The collagen, it's in your skin too.
They get
That's
really,
that,
really
that
horrible
icky
to the
stuff.
point where the
That's the
nastiness
collagen.
is the point of the movie.
Yep, and all
Where
that.
older movies like Hellraiser or The Exorcist,
like bone
they
marrow.
actually had
That used to gross me
a
out
good
when
story,
people talk about that.
and the violence was incidental
Sucking
to
out
the
bone
story.
marrow. And I never knew
now
anyone
we're
that
getting these
actually
movies
like.
where the violence is
I
the
did know
main
a
show,
Mexican guy that
and the
ate
story
chicken
is just
bones.
made up as an excuse to get the violence on screen.
I told him,
And there's
no,
actually
he
been
would eat
filmmakers
drumstick.
who've
He just
admitted
chewed the ends
that
off of them,
process
basically, that
with these
cartilage and
movies.
stuff.
Passion
He
of the
would gnaw
Christ.
that, and then he would take
I
the
only
actual
watched it
bone and
once,
break
and I
it in
felt
half.
sick.
I literally
And then
walked
he would
out.
start.
I don't think
He
I could
did.
watch it again.
But
I'm
that's to get the
familiar
marrow. He was.
with
He
a
grew
lot
up
of
in
that stuff
Mexico,
from the books
dude. He
that
was
I've
a
read.
real.
I mean,
Yep.
I've read a lot of books
You
about
eat
like
that shit.
psychopaths and serial killers.
That's
And
and
some of
that's
the
the
stuff
good
that's in those
stuff.
books,
Inside
you
that
put
bone
that
is
put
the
on
good
screen,
stuff.
people would run out to
Dude, I'm out in the
cinema if they
middle of the
saw
desert
it.
with no
So yeah, I'm of the
wheels.
opinion that it's some of these things
Okay,
are good for
CJ.
exploring in film, but some of them should be just left in print alone. You know.
So
Yeah.
could you did you do like a spreadsheet of it and where you like
I'm playing a
had
black
like
man in the middle of a
what year
desert
it
without a
got
car.
like
What's
worse or
going to
more
happen by
violent
the
and when
laws of
It went in stages as it went along.
drama?
I mean, there were certain key points.
Like if at
One of
least
the
if I had a
major key
horse,
points, the
he could be a
earliest
black
on-screen
cowboy and I
murder
might
was in
survive. Come on.
1905. It was I can't
A
remember the
black
name of the movie,
a
but it
city
showed the
guy, a
beheadings.
black city guy in the middle of the
And it was done
desert.
with special effects where everybody was watching the beheading be done, and then the actor was removed,
That
and
does.
the camera was kept in the same place, and then the dummy was just put in. You could see the head fall off.
I was gonna
And
say what?
by today's standards,
Yeah,
it's just
I
like
think I've heard that
whatever.
before.
But back then, it was like, oh my god. And then,
Yeah.
the early 1930s.
You okay?
Wait, he would Frankenstein came out, and people were walking whistle. The legal system hadn't really caught up. Movies were a new thing, and so they hadn't anticipated what are we going to do when we get movies that have extreme violence. What kind of
They
violence
didn't
should we allow?
kill him.
What age limit should be on people seeing these movies? So Frankenstein came out, and it was a breakthrough movie. But it had a lot of things that back then were just considered to be way too brutal. Like Frankenstein picks up a little girl, he's playing with her, and he accidentally drowns her. You know? And today we'd be like, no, that's nothing compared to what we see. But back then, you were horrified. And they had to, the distributors told the filmmakers, look, you're going to have to remove some of these scenes from the movie because audiences are freaked and can't deal with it.
Look, it's a Cars reference almost.
And some of those scenes have been lost to history, and some of them have been rediscovered.
Old beat up car out in the desert.
I think the scene with the little girl in the
I don't know when did Cars come out.
So that was just
no, that's gotta be a Cars reference, like the TV.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
The way I've described it, it's so tame, you realise how much further it's gone. And then eventually the Hays Code came in where, you know, the government stepped in and said, right,
GTA came out later. It's 2004. It's San Andreas.
Well, actually, it wasn't the government that did it. It was all the studios had to get it themselves and develop their own code.
Right.
I mean, that's a long time ago now, but yeah, to me, that's not that long. I thought it was older than that.
In the film.
But then you realize, yeah, 1999, when did GTA 3 came out?
Yeah, that's a big problem with things like that.
Yeah, it's like, wait, we're going down the wrong road there.
Yeah, they went over the top.
See, that's weird stuff, man. That's Simpsons stuff, zeitgeist. But that's when you're messing with symbols, you know? Like, why did the people in cars use it? It was already a trope of, Route 66 and old cars and side of the road. So it's only in hindsight when it connects that you, like, oh, whoa. And especially when you're dealing with artists who, like, they're purposely using symbols and patent tropes.
And out of that came some really good movies like Psycho. And that movie, you know, it's renowned for its shower murder scene, which was a shocker at the time. You know,
Right.
But there was a lot of things that,
Oh, so he's trying to get like a scout, like trying to get your Eagle project, your last. You can do it, dude. Yeah.
things like that.
You wouldn't have to do that because his junior year
just like was, and then because the movie is such a big hit, then you get other distributors saying,
yeah.
So with this code, there's money to be made on it.
because he has dyslexia and dysgraphia.
More toilets.
Yeah.
They didn't want to accommodate for that, so they kicked him out, which is totally against the law.
And then in the 70s, all the brutal stuff came in.
Gotta find some way to educate them.
Straw dogs, and things like that. And in the 70s, once
Find some way, yeah.
The on-screen violence went through the roof. The exorcist, that crucifix scene.
It'd be hard being dyslexic, but you really, in the real world, you don't have to read a whole lot. Like, you need to be able to read signs and paint cans and all that. Like,
if it weren't a little girl, it wouldn't have
I didn't read a whole lot in my
life. Crazy. And so I was like, yeah, I'm not going to see that. But I was little.
And even more nowadays, well, you're getting read out loud. Your phone alone can read shit to you.
Yeah, so the 70s was definitely a key era where the violence was getting shown a lot more.
Yeah, we'll see.
There was some good social aspects to it. It got people talking about things, you know. It got people talking about the brutality.
But yeah, that's one of the theories, and we'll see, because, you know, people don't want reading and writing to go away. But at one time, we were a verbal society. We didn't really read and write. And now with technology, a lot may go back to, like, how much YouTube has replaced web pages. Like, people don't read blogs, they don't. So it may go. And maybe become we're just a lot more of a verbal society.
It was like all the violence was there, but a lot of it was very tongue-in-cheek and fun in the 80s. And that, I think that worked really well. Loads of people, if you ask them, they love the 80s for movies. They're like, you want action movies? 80s was the time. Terminator, RoboCop, Aliens, Predator, all of them.
And then all the Rocky movies and...
Oh, yeah. So much of it. The Rambo and all them, you know. It's fantastic. And then we got into the 90s. For some reason, I mean, there was a lot of great movies came out in the 90s, but some of the creativity started to wane a little bit, and you started to get some of the nastier stuff coming out. Seven, the David Fincher one, which a lot of people love it, but I think it's kind of lame. And that movie was like kind of a showcase of nastiness, although most of it was described and not actually shown.
Right.
And then as we got into the 2000s, we got movies like Hostel and Wolf Creek and stuff like that. Now we had, in the 1980s, we had these slasher movies like Friday the 13th and the video nappies. What was the one? I Spit on Your Grave was brutal. That was the 70s actually, wasn't it? So we had all that stuff then, the really brutal, horrible stuff. But it was kind of looked upon as being like low grade. All the other movies, the really well-made movies, they were the ones that shined. And those movies were just like the movies that got rented from the back of the video store. Oh yeah, there's that little stupid section where all those nasty movies are. But in the 2000s, we started to get a resurgence of the video nasties from the 70s and 80s, but done with bigger budgets to make them look more like proper Hollywood productions. So we've had like the Saw movies and the Terrifier movies and stuff like that. And it's like all those filmmakers are just competing with each other to see who can get the most nastiness on screen at once. It's not just about the gore, and that's where it's reached now. And it's like actual decent horror movies are hardly getting made anymore. If they do, they don't get a lot of attention. And so that's the point where we're at now. And I have a problem with it because I read all those books on real serial killer cases. I know of stuff that could be shown on screen.
Read them and weep, cabrón.
Which I will not describe here because the
So this is
algorithm
it, huh?
Yeah,
the great new business venture that's supposed to save all of our worthless
just acts
lives.
of cruelty that are
Wanna
so
get in?
brutal.
Look, I thought this was supposed to be our foot on the ladder. I thought we were gonna make this place work.
Sorry, I haven't read about
Hey,
it.
it might look like we're playing cards,
The
but
way
we actually planning.
Don't worry, sweet baby.
We're about to go get our first project.
At last,
If it carries on going
What
that way,
works?
Oh,
then
just a
these
simple
kinds
bit of
things
electronic
from these real
wizardry and
cases,
intellectual
eventually
bombast
some
that
filmmakers
hacks
are
into
gonna
the
have
state-of-the-art
to go,
satellite
I'll do that.
immobilization
It's
technology
made in
on board our target
It'll
vehicle.
be stuff involving kids. It'll be, there'll be a
I
lot
don't
of
know
really
what he
bad
just
stuff
said,
that
but it's
comes out of
on.
Yes,
that if
it's on.
we don't find
Wait,
a way
what's
to
on?
curb it now. I don't really believe in government censorship
This
of
gadget is
things,
set to pick up on cell
but
phone
I do
signals.
think a lot of these
Each time she makes a
filmmakers
call, it
who
will give you
are
the new
pushing
location.
that kind of
You
stuff
have
on
to stay
screen
close
and
if you're
trying
going to
make
get an
it
updated
cool.
position,
They're
though.
trying to take the most brutal
Okay.
thing you can do to a person and make it so it's cool.
For sure.
And then a lot of
Good
people
looking,
are like, oh, let's go and watch that. Ooh, that was a good kill, wasn't it?
Ain't
You know?
nothing old-fashioned.
I think there needs to be some backlash against that. I think these filmmakers need to be called out for what they're doing because it's so irresponsible.
Yeah. Do you think that's excuse me? Do you think that's what it will take? Because I also have noticed just in life in general, in my 60 years on Earth, that there's like this pendulum swing, sometimes, and it just gets so bad that people are like over it, and then it kind of swings back the other way. Although I say that, and music just seems to get worse and worse and more demonic all the time. So who knows?
Music. I haven't been following music much for a long, long time because I just found it all getting repetitive and not much creativity there, so I can't really
This
comment
gadget
on
is
the
set to
music
pick up
side
on
of it.
cell phone
Yeah.
signals.
But yeah, the pendulum swing thing is interesting because one of the things that I found when I was looking through all this history of brutality in films, the issue of sexual attacks on people, I don't want to use that, the R
Right.
word,
Have increased.
the issue of those kinds of attacks on people, that reached a brutal point in the 1970s and 80s. You had movies like I Spit on Your Grave, which was one of the very worst examples. You had Death Wish 2, which is a brilliant film, very underappreciated. And that actually shows the brutality of a gang attack in that respect.
Wow. Yeah. No.
Really goes brutal on it. But it's kind of like the filmmakers are saying, look, this is what it's like. And they actually got an actress in who had experience of it herself.
Wow.
And she went and consulted with other women who had the same. And she was like, yeah, I want people to see what this is like, So it's not an exploitation film, although the critics took it as that way. It's a vigilante story, and it's showing the victim's point of view on how bad things can get. So you had those examples in the 1970s and 80s. Then when we got into the 1990s, a lot of the issues to do with women's rights and sexism, all of those started to become more politically prevalent, which was a good thing. But the film studios and the filmmakers responded to that by not showing that kind of content in movies much anymore. So they went more brutal on the violence, but sexual attacks, that subsided. And as far as I can tell, it was done without any legal intervention. It was just happened because of a cultural change.
Since 1968, no pope has presided over the oath of the Swiss Guards. The last was Pope Paul VI. It makes sense for a pontiff to be present, however. After all, these new recruits swear, in this case, to defend Pope Leo XIV, even to the point of giving up their lives if necessary. This is how the ceremony began.
Read them.
This gadget is set to pick up on cell phone signals.
There are 27 new soldiers who joined the 135 members of the Pope's personal guard. Although it may seem like they're only stationed at the entrances of the Vatican, their work goes far beyond that. For example, even when not wearing these striking uniforms, they provide the Pope's protection at all apostolic trips, both inside and outside Italy. This is what the commander of the Swiss Guards expressed to the Pope minutes before the oath.
Santo Padre, con questo giuramento ogni singola guardia si impegna a servire con tutte le sue forze. Lei è, se le circostanze lo richiederanno, persino al sacrificare la propria vita.
Every detail of how the new recruits swear the oath has a reason. They may do it in Italian, German, or French, 3 of the official languages of Switzerland, depending on the canton. Then the moment arrived. Each of the 27 candidates approached the standard of the Swiss Guard, holding the flag in the left hand and raising the right hand with 3 fingers extended, symbolizing the Holy Trinity.
Oh my
the
gosh,
also
dude.
recited the oath aloud, which reads as follows. The ceremony was accompanied by the sound of drums and applause. After witnessing
What
the
is she
entire ceremony,
doing?
Pope Leo
Okay.
XIV addressed a short message to his new guards.
È una testimonianza molto importante nel mondo di oggi. Ci fa capire l'importanza della disciplina, del sacrificio, di vivere la fede in una maniera
It just
che
wants me to
veramente
drive batshit crazy, I
a
guess.
tutti i giorni, del valore di dare la vita, di servire e pensare agli altri.
What's going on here,
Vi
dude?
ringrazio in nome mio e di tutta la Santa Sede per il vostro servizio.
What is going on,
At
dude?
the end of the ceremony, the Pope greeted the president of the Swiss Confederation,
Huh.
who attended the
Quit
event
whining.
and met him in the days prior.
Okay. Careful.
Perched on a hill with panoramic views of Los Angeles and the San Fernando Valley, there's a spot where you can soak in world-class art without spending a dime. And no, it's not some underground hipster gallery in Silver Lake. It's a cemetery.
Dr. Peter Weller, and the doctor's not honorary. This is Dr. James Fishburne, and his doctor's not honorary. Because we went to UCLA. Yeah, and we got PhDs from there. This is James Fishburne, my buddy. I was the director of the Forest Lawn Museum. So there's a museum up there. Well, right now we're going to walk into this museum, and we're going to check out a couple of things. So Dr. Giacomo says there's very little filming here anymore because of...
We allow it, but it has to be approved by our board, and it's...
They can't do too much.
Can't do too much because we got to keep, serving families. But we have an art museum. It's free. It's open.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's a great art museum. You've done a great job with it.
Thank
so
you.
this is Narcissus. Now look, I just want to give you a quick heads up. You see stained glass in France?
No,
you see
we
stained
didn't.
glass
Sorry,
in
bro.
England,
Work
you see
it out.
stained glass in Europe. A lot of times that glass is indeed
We will in the
stained. It's
morning.
painted on. Sometimes it's just the glass. Go ahead. It's
Yeah.
just the glass itself that is the color, right?
Yeah. So this is a transitional piece in the career of an artist named Narcissus Cogliata. The outside parts, this is fused glass right here.
Which means
it's-
what?
It means it's different colors of glass melted and fused together right
to
here.
make a color.
This is actually blown glass. You see those streaks in there. So it's blown into a cylinder. The cylinder's cut, then it's flattened, and then you get sheets of it, and you cut it and insert it here. The head of this boxer figure is painted or stained. So this is the head, the main figure is much more traditional, whereas the fused glass is a late 20th century technique invented by Bullseye Glass in Portland, and he has been a partner with Bullseye for decades now.
Do you understand all that? I mean, that's the distinction we're going to use. Oh, it's stained glass. It could be stained glass, could be real glass, could be fused glass, could be all sorts of things. And only artists with glass really can understand the process of it. Okay, let's go on. I say that this looks like Belle Epoque. That's that period at the late 1800s, early 1900s, essentially French, where everything gets very aesthetic and very real again, with like sort of Raffaello flesh tones. That means the flesh tones are like very, very tangible, very plastic and like touchable. But what is this? Who is this person?
So this is William Adolph Bouguereau's Song of the Angels.
Bouguereau.
Yes, and he's late 1800s. He's sort of just prior to the Belle Epoque. I call him academic.
Belle Epoque means beautiful period.
Yeah.
Right?
He is a contemporary of the Impressionists, and I hope you can tell that he was not an Impressionist. He was very, very academic. He did many sketches, many studies ahead of time, worked in a studio with models. He was not out in, a...
Hey, girl!
Exactly.
Okay, so just a quick thing.
There's 2 cars on the list,
When
they
you've seen
say,
Impressionist painter
and
like
they're in the showroom
Monet,
across
Monet,
town. Let's go
Impressionist,
get them.
If you see Pizarro,
Always
you go all the
admired
way
your
up to
direct approach,
the great
hombre.
guy who sort of supervised them all, Caillebotte. If you walk, Gustav Caillebotte, if you walk up to an Impressionist painting
let's go
and you
get
take
those
an
wheels.
inch, right, with the amount of paint they're throwing up there to give you the impression of the sun hitting the thing, you don't know what it is. It's just a bunch of paint. If you see figurative realism,
I like this
you
place,
can go
you
up
know?
and you can say, okay,
San
see that
Fierro,
baby's
man.
nose? You can go and take a micro of that nose, and it looks like a
My home
baby's
will always
nose.
be the
An
Varios
Impressionism
and El
ain't gonna look
Corona.
like a
But
nose.
this city,
It's gonna look like
it
a
has
bunch of
something gentle
like
about
flesh
it.
tones and white tones and whatever mixed together.
Kendall
So
said
this
you
is not an
like it too,
impressionist,
you
right?
know?
This is
Oh,
a
yeah,
figurative
she's really
realist.
getting her
From
head into this
what
business
period would you
thing.
say? What do you
That's
call
good.
it?
I would
She
call it
always been a
French
brains of
academic
family.
painting.
She get
late
out
French
together, we'll make
academic.
something
That
of
sounds
herself.
so hoity-toity.
I think she's aiming to
I mean,
make
do we
something out of
really
all
want to
of
go
us,
to?
eh?
I want to go to the Louvre and
Yeah,
study
she the
French
moms of the
academic
family
painting.
now.
Yeah, but
Hey,
it
who's
is
this truth guy,
academic painting,
Holmes?
right?
It
I don't
is,
think
yeah.
he's wrapped too
And
tight.
He
we
just sees
purchased
everything
this
from
was
a
painted in the
different
late
perspective,
1800s.
that's
We
all.
purchased
At
it
first, I
around
thought he was just another
1940,
acid
and we
casual
had it for
fruitcake.
decades
Some
in
of
a
the things he
church,
say,
which is
I don't
across
know,
the
man,
parking
it
lot
ain't
from the
no
museum.
bullshit.
15 years ago, moved it in here just
Hey,
to
you gonna
protect it
become an
because
alien hunter,
we really
Holmes?
treasure this.
Okay, can I
I'll
tell
take
you
a
what I
rain
like
check
about
on
this
that
painting? Like, I think it was Rembrandt said, walk into a museum, look at your a place, find a painting you like, don't look at anything else, look at it for 3 minutes and tell yourself why you like it, and then move on. Otherwise you get brain dead, you're never going to get out of that room. It doesn't matter whether you're art historians or art scholars like us, or it doesn't matter if like you're serious dudes.
Yeah.
You're going to go brain dead.
Yeah.
You can't go through a museum room and go, I'm going to look at every single Napoleonic court painter and I'm going to explain it to myself. Your head falls into the grits. It doesn't matter whether it's Rembrandt or not. Right?
Whenever I go to a new city or a new
This is it,
museum,
CJ.
I tell
The
myself,
cars are on the
you
second
can't
floor.
see everything,
What?
and that's
How we gonna get 'em
okay.
done?
It's okay. So, kind of soothe myself.
Yeah, man.
But it's
when
true.
you're on the bus and truck tour from
Can I help
Omaha,
you too,
down bus Omaha, you want to see
gentlemen?
everything.
Exactly, yeah.
And somebody's
You can help
talking.
us by
Okay,
going to
look,
help
the
some
thing
other
that grabs me about this is
Yeah,
is
that sounds
foreshortening.
like a
It's
good
called
idea.
foreshortening.
All right, CJ,
That means that
it's time
somebody's
to roll.
face,
Follow the leader. You better keep
his hand
up.
is coming out to you, or like in Caravaggio's Suffered Aeneas or something like
you
that.
a maniac,
Or the
yes,
head
sir?
is turned. Look how the violinist angel head is down, and you're looking at her nose, the top of her nose, and essentially what you're looking at is the top of her head, right? And the face is disappearing into it with that violin. I'm just amazed by this. I could look at this all day long, and it's an amazing painting. Let's move on. It's back to Narcissus for a second. So this is my favorite Narcissus piece. Okay, I know it's a replication of some antique figure, but who could it be?
This piece is called The Solitude of Narcissus, and he's within
Narcissus?
He's within so it's probably the figure of Narcissus within a narcissus flower, sort of imagined at the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
And I agree.
Showing the story of Narcissus. Narcissus, the guy looks in the water and falls in love with himself, like most of us do.
You a comedian, asshole.
Go ahead.
And this actually has huge swaths of blown glass, some small inserts of fused glass, and then a little bit of stained glass. It's really sort of minimalist painting, but he gets the job done. It's very efficient painting, and then it's all sort of held together with pieces of lead, and you can just bend the lead with your hands. You don't have to heat it up.
Right. Okay.
And they're using the same
Caesar,
leading
that's
technique
enough fun. Let's get these cars
900,
back to the
800 years
garage.
ago that we're using still today.
Okay, let me ask you this though. You got guys like Pietro Cavallini. You're not going to know that name, but you're going to learn that name because he's one of the great influences on Giotto, who's the greatest influence on all painting in the world. But Cavallini, his mosaics with depth. I mean, I go into the Santa Maria Trastevere, I look at this, like the story of the Virgin, in mosaic, pieces in glass.
Yeah.
There's 6 levels of depth. Now, those mosaic pieces, those little mosaic pieces are little tessera.
Yeah.
Are those
You think about getting
painted
back
or are they
before I end up in a
fused?
car wreck
Those
barbecue?
Are real.
are cut pieces of glass. And
They're real cut
seamless
pieces.
transition to our mosaic right here.
All right, seamless
This
transition.
is a mosaic of a scene from the Sistine Chapel ceiling. This was done in Pietrasanta, Italy. This is pieces of Venetian glass. They cut these glass. Sometimes they sort of shave them with a sander, and they assemble this incredible scene. And you get this almost like dappled light on the skin. And it's also a little bit like an impressionist painting when you think about it.
Yeah, totally. It's how the light hits it for sure, but it's also figure of realism, because when I take that eye, I could see in that eye, it's an eye, but at the same time, it is how the light hits it, because the different shades of light. But this is a mosaic. This is from Tessera. This is from pieces of glass from Venice.
The glass is made in Venice, and then the mosaic was made in Pietrasanta in Tuscany, kind of near Carrara. And this is the painting they worked from, the artist worked from, and those little comments on there from one artist to another saying like, oh, to see the smokiness of this, you need to make it darker. Oh, make this more maroon. And then they were making those changes in this scene here.
Oh man, are you kidding?
And I want to point out one element here, which is in the mosaic, it's not pixels like on a TV where every pixel is the same shape. Every tessera is a slightly different shape. They cut them, they shave them. That's a little sort of trapezoid, that's a square, that's a rectangle. So it really varies. Each piece is unique to the need.
It's different. Yeah, I just can't imagine doing it now, man. I go to Santa Maria just every, I think that's in the late 1200s, early 1300s. How did that guy do that? How did that guy make water pouring with people looking through curtains, you know? People like the Virgin is stretched out on a couch. Are you effing kidding me? You know?
I visited this studio last month in Pietrasanta, and the way they do it, it's 5 people sitting around a table. They each take a section. They're listening to their iPods or whatever.
You're kidding me.
No, and
that's like Phil Tippett. I got to tell you, Phil Tippett is one of the great stop motion animators. And he did the Jurassic Park and did CGI, right?
Yeah.
Okay, he's doing the not doing it one of my movies, but I will. Ed 209 is a stop motion animation. It's a cutout, and then you shoot, and then you put in this little puppet, and you make it move frame by frame, and there's 24 frames per second, so you got to move it, and then
it's as painstaking.
And then move it again.
It's as painstaking as that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking at this. I want to slit my wrists, or scream and break plates. Because I don't have the patience for that, man.
No. They have buckets and buckets of different colors, and they say, oh, I'm going to pick a brown 42, a red 18.
Okay, tell me the truth. You got to be stoned to do this. I mean, you have to smoke serious ganja to have the patience to do this.
I honestly think you have to take lots of breaks.
Okay.
I think so.
Lots of breaks.
Yeah.
Okay, let's moving on. I can't see everything. That's astounding. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it fell. More brick is falling. It's falling at 60. Look, that's all coming. Look. Oh, shit. Oh my God.
So are you saying the Smithsonian hides evidence of giants?
The story's always the same. This guy's digging and finds these giant bones, calls the Smithsonian, they come over, they investigate, they take the bones, they go back, and then it disappears. Much later, the Dead Sea Scrolls are found, and then among the thousands of parchment, there's the Book of Enoch. That title sounds cute until you read it and you realize he's talking about really Adam and Eve. The CIA was so interested in the Book of Adam and Eve is because it describes the end of the world.
Let's dive into the giants.
Giants are fun, and where do you want to start? The beginning?
Yeah.
Giants are in every culture's history. Every culture's got giants mentioned. Ancient Indian Vedas, Native Americans, island of Malta, East Asian, every culture has giants. And the Bible, of course. Epic of Gilgamesh. So giants show up all through our culture. And whenever I see that, a lot of what I do is just pattern recognition. Like, I wasn't even really a flood myth guy until I started doing my show. And it's like,
It's amazing.
this flood story keeps showing up over and over, no matter what I'm talking about. The flood myth shows up, and it's always showing up at the same time as, like, the end of the Younger Dryas. Like, these things, it's just the same pattern over and over.
Hey,
Maybe
man,
it's a
what did you
coincidence,
want?
but
Is you gonna free my brother?
if one culture has a story about a flood, then they have a story. If two cultures have it, it could be a coincidence. But if you get 40 or 300, then maybe there's something to it. Maybe it really happened.
Oh, thanks.
So,
after
so I'm
what
pretty sure
you've
that
done
flood
for me,
happened.
it's
As
like
for
you're a pro
giants,
now. I got double agents in Panama.
giants
I
is
want to put a price
tricky
on your head.
because
A Russian spy.
we don't have any hard
little
evidence,
fat Boris
but we
looking
have a
guy.
lot of
He's asking
circumstantial
for clearance
evidence.
to interrogate you. Russian
Where,
style. Calipers on the
The
genitals.
most recent would probably be
That ain't
late
nothing cool,
19th
man.
century
Just
or
leave me
early,
alone.
early
You bad
20th,
news.
Don't worry
where you
about
just
it.
had these
The Russians got bigger
discoveries
things to
all
worry
over
about than your genitals,
America.
believe me.
Over
Whole country
1,000
with
of
this
them.
shit. We tried hard to put a lid on it. But
These
that idiot
amateur
Gorbachev with his
archaeologists
little
finding
strawberry in his
giant
forehead, he
bones.
gave away the crown jewels.
And
Still, they got their...
the story is always the same. Is this guy's? He's he's digging. He's like desecrating a Native American burial mound. Finds these giant bones.
You offer them $1.
Calls the
If they give you
Smithsonian.
a hard time,
They come over.
I'm gonna
They
need you to start doing
investigate. They
some
take the
real wet
bones.
work
They go
here,
back,
please,
and then it
okay?
disappears.
Enough of
Like
this
that
little girl
happens
bullshit. Now get out
over
of
and
here.
over through
Come on.
these stories. Is the Smithsonian conspiracies always involved? But
So are you saying the Smithsonian hides evidence of giants?
I'm saying that the conspiracy theory is that the Smithsonian hides evidence of a lot of things. The Smithsonian, of which I'm a huge fan of. Like, if I go to D.C., I spend 4 days there. I love the museum part. But what we don't see is we don't see the kind of the dark underside of the Smithsonian. Like, when it was formed.
Like the Vatican.
The Vatican. We can talk about that too. The Smithsonian, I think the first director might have been John Wesley Powell. I could be fact-checked on that. Who was, he spent a lot of time with Native Americans. He respected them. He saw them as very intelligent and resourceful. So they were well represented in the Smithsonian. But then he appointed, I forget the gentleman's name, but he was like the chief ethnographer for the East Ohio or something like this, some crazy title. And he gets into a position of power, and it turns out that he sees Native cultures as Native Americans as subhuman. He called them specimens. He would put like their body parts on display and stuff. Look at these Native American specimens. So there'd be all these discoveries of these amazing mounds, like the Serpent Mound in Ohio, and all this stuff all around the country. And the Smithsonian would say there must have been another advanced race here because Native Americans are just they're savages. They couldn't never build this. And that became kind of embedded in the Smithsonian for a long, long time. Is this isolationist theory is what they called it, where before it was called diffusionism, where diffusionism was cultures from all around the world interacted. But then the new regime came in and said there's no way that Native Americans from the Mississippian culture could interact with the Mayans or the Incas. They were too savage to do that, which is ridiculous. That's like, saying that Carthage didn't have anything to do with Rome. Of course they did. And we've learned later that some of the biggest, most advanced cities in the world of the ancient world were here in America. Like the city of Cahokia was a Mississippian culture, and it was bigger than London. It was bigger than Paris. It was like a big advanced civilization that just got kind of covered over. And so the Smithsonian just sort of had this worldview that they're just locked into it, and I think we see a lot of that with pseudoscience, pseudo-archaeology. If it doesn't fit the mainstream narrative, then you're marginalized, you're censored. Again, Graham Hancock, when Ancient Apocalypse came out, it was called the most dangerous series on Netflix because it was white supremacy and all this crazy stuff.
White supremacy?
Because if it's an advanced civilization that was here before us, the implication is that it was white. And he never says anything like that. He never says anything like that. He's married to a woman of color. So it's infuriating. Because he took a lot of heat for that show.
I love that show.
Of course. And you don't have to believe all of it. And I don't subscribe to everything he does, but I'm fascinated by the topics. And we can get back to giants in a second. I'm just trying to set up that there are forces that want to keep certain things away from us.
Mm-hmm.
There's an initiative right now to have the Smithsonian catalog and make public everything they have there, which I don't think is going anywhere. The Smithsonian gets very strange carve-outs of laws. There was a law passed not too long ago which required all museums to return anything that was of value to Native American cultures back to the tribes, especially if it was funeral, anything that had to do like funeral, whatever it's called, death rights or whatever, to return all that stuff. So this law is passed, the museums have to do all that, but specifically it says in line after line, Smithsonian is exempt. Smithsonian doesn't count. Smithsonian doesn't have to do any of this, so they don't have to respond to any of it. So then we go back to Grand Canyon or the Giants, and we don't really know. It's hard to know what's true because there's over 1,000 reports in newspapers of these findings. But the mainstream narrative is it was giants were cool at the time, it was hoaxes, and it was just to make money. But it's just too many coincidences. And there's one.
Is your dog ready to be a Quattro dog? For full safety information, side effects, and warnings, click.
There's one giant story that's interesting because it overlaps several cultures, native cultures, where you've got in like the Mississippi Valley, they have these Indian myths about these giants they're cannibals, so they're eating the people, and they get driven west by the tribes. They unite and drive them west into like Nevada and California, and they end up at what's known as Lovelock Cave. And the Lovelock Cave giants are famous giants, are the red-haired giants. So the story goes that they're at war with all these tribes, and during the war, when the natives are falling, they're like eating them in the battlefield. So it unites the tribes, and they drive them into Lovelock Cave, and they seal the cave, and they set fire to the whole place. And an archaeologist goes in there and finds
You hit me, asshole!
sandals that are like size 29, and these giant clothes that, like, I'm not making this part up. You can go see this. Like, why is there a sandal that's this size? That are all found in the cave, and bones and red hair. But and all that stuff has been sent back, and then it's just gone.
Managing a household, especially with kids, is no small feat. I totally get it, and that's why I've made sure my family has a plan in place if something unexpected ever happens. But what about you? Do you have a plan to help protect your family's financial future? Don't worry. Fabric by Gerber Life can help. Fabric by Gerber Life is term life insurance you can get done today. Made for busy parents like you, all online, on your schedule, right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes with no health exam required. Fabric has flexible, high-quality policies that fit your family and your budget, like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Fabric also has free digital wills, tools to invest in your kids' future, and more, all right from your phone. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/srclips. That's meetfabric.com/srclips. meetfabric.com/srclips. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions.
Anywho, they meet up
And as recently as just maybe like 20 years ago,
you might, like to
at some point someone discovered these giant coffins, giant coffins with lids on them, and they were sent to the Smithsonian.
Was there anything in the coffin?
Not that I'm aware of, but they were coffins, and they were big. And native cultures didn't do that. They didn't have coffins or bury their dead. At least none that I'm aware of. That was not part of their culture. So this was very strange. So those were sent to the Smithsonian, and then it kind of disappeared. But then, not too long ago, someone picked up on the story and asked the Smithsonian about them, and they said, "We do have record of receiving that, but we don't know where they are." And that was kind of the end of it. And then a few years later, someone else got involved. I think it was John Tierney. John Tierney really went after Smithsonian hard. He wrote a book about like Smithsonian is the greatest cover-up. So it might have been Tierney that he said, "Okay, I know that you said you received these. You can't find them. I need you to find them." And they said, "Okay, we found them, but they're in a warehouse it's got an asbestos problem, so no one could go in there." And he said, "Well, when can we go in there?" And they said, "About 10 years." And that was really the last of it. So the Smithsonian gets wrapped up in all these weird conspiracies. There's the Acambaro statues, which is very controversial, which is like 3,000 artifacts that show humans riding dinosaurs. They show Asians, Africans, races that shouldn't be around there, that are carbon dated to 2,500 years ago, 3,500 years ago. And they're sent to Smithsonian. The Smithsonian said, "Yeah, these things are 30 years old. They're a hoax." But they were independently validated by other labs saying, "No, these things are really, really old." Smithsonian's like, "Nah, it's a hoax." And then as time goes on, all those other labs become discredited, like, "Oh, their techniques weren't modern." And that's kind of where the Acambaro has ended up, as far as I know.
Now, Carl, so what do you think of our new base of
Because
operations?
I don't know if anyone really cares enough to follow up
Maybe
on
a
stuff
tennis
like
court
that. I
and pool
do.
would help motivate me better.
Very nice, Carl.
So
Very cute.
I kind of want to know, like, what do you have down there? I think they have
No, I ain't.
almost 1 billion artifacts that we can't see. And I just want to know what they are. So all those giant bones that were found, okay, I'm sure 99% of them are hoaxes. And maybe there's a 0.5% that were mastodon bones that were misidentified. But what happened in Lovelock Cave? We know stuff was in there because there was a tribal leader, a woman who became kind of a famous author. She had red hair woven into like some of her traditional garb, and she said it's from the Lovelock Giants. Like, where did she get that red hair? So I'm not saying it's real. I'm just saying I would like to know what's the chain of custody there. So there's just a lot of those.
I mean, this all came from biblical stuff, though, correct?
Yeah. So the biblical giants, you don't see much of them in the canonical Bible. The Nephilim are mentioned once, and I could talk about them a little bit. But we learn more about giants when the Book of Enoch is discovered. And the Book of Enoch was discovered when, like, an adventurer, I forget when it was, maybe 18th century, was looking for the source of the Nile River, which was kind of a big deal at the time. And he found it. And it was somewhere in Ethiopia. And he gets to know the locals there, and they're Ethiopian Jews that have been there for 3,000 years. So he's friendly with them. They take him up to their, whatever you call it, their church, and he sees this giant book. What's like a giant book? What's that? He said, that's the Bible. He said, oh, it's a Bible? They said, no, that's the Bible. You know, when the King James Bible, I don't know how many books it is, like 66 or something like that. But this had over 100 books. And in there were Book of Enoch, the Book of Giants, all this other stuff. So you have Genesis that starts,
maybe just a little.
you know, basically let there be light. But in this expanded Bible, you have all this stuff that happened before then. So we know a little bit about Moses from the Bible, but if you read these other books, you learn all about Moses and Enoch and Methuselah, and these men are all related, you know. And going back this like 10 or 12 generations from Adam, it's all in there. And this kind of ties in with the pseudo-archaeology and how mainstream wants you to stay in your lane. So this book is discovered, and they've had this for thousands of years. There's the story of the Queen of Sheba. There's only a little bit about her in the main Bible, but this expanded Bible has the Queen of Sheba going up to meet King Solomon, and she's fascinated by him, and they fall in love, and she gives him a child named Menelik, and that ties into the Ark of the Covenant and all that stuff. So we have that one story, but it's kind of an outlier. It's Ethiopian Jews, which is kind of strange, but illegitimate. But then much later, the Dead Sea Scrolls are found, and then among the thousands of parchment there's the Book of Enoch, copies and copies of it, and the Book of Giants. So the story is that there's these sky gods. And this story, for people who know it, is going to track exactly with the Anunnaki. It's going to track right with it. This Bible story is going to track right with it. So you've got these sky gods, and they send watchers down to Earth, and their job is to shepherd and guide humans, teach them animal husbandry and agriculture and all that stuff. But the watchers become corrupt and fascinated with human women. The heckler says, oh, that's not going to end well. And it didn't. So the watchers, who are probably angels, they interbreed with humans, and then their offspring are the Nephilim. And the Nephilim are they're giants. In some books, they're 350 feet tall. They're vicious, they're violent, they're cannibals. And these are the unholy offspring of the angels and humans.
Is it angels and humans or demons and humans?
In the earlier books, what's the difference? You know, I don't think the books really take a stance, because the Watchers are there with good intentions. But I think there's lessons in all of that anyone can be corrupted. Certain Persian women are pretty enough. So the giants now they're ravaging the world, and they're just making a mess of things. And that's when God decides it's got to stop. We got to start over, and then He wipes it away with the flood. But the Book of Enoch expands on all of that and has Enoch going up to heaven to speak to God, and that's heresy to say, because heaven's not supposed to be a place. Like, mortal man can't go to heaven and certainly can't come back, but Enoch did. And he was specifically taken there. I think he was taken there by Uriel and taken up there in a chariot of fire. And then Enoch is walking around heaven, but he's describing a place where he's seeing tall beings of light going about their business, and the walls are covered with how he describes as emeralds that are just blinking lights on and off. And he talks about how he can see all of the earth, and he describes how he can see how the winds are made, and I can see every lake and river on the earth. And when you think of heaven, you think of clouds in the sky, but Enoch said that there's a roof, there's a ceiling, and everything is shiny. And what it sounds like he's describing is a spacecraft, if you read the book. Like, if you read the book through a modern lens, it's like this guy is on a UFO, is where Enoch is. So he's up there, and they take him all around the cosmos. And this is all in the book. He describes the solar system and he's told the Earth goes around the sun in 364 days. You weren't supposed to know any of that then in the Book of Enoch. And then he's given a directive from God to go take this message down to the Nephilim and the Watchers that, if you don't get your shit together, it's going to get bad down here. And they ignore the order, and that's when the flood comes. And then only one man is chosen to survive the flood, and that's Enoch's grandson, and that's Noah. And that's where the Noah's Ark story comes from. But it tracks pretty closely with the Anunnaki story and the Cataclysm. And it tracks a little bit with the epic of Gilgamesh and Utnapishtim and the flood there. And a lot of these other stories.
Wow. That's fascinating.
I think so.
Didn't the Smithsonian cover up Adam and Eve or something?
Are you talking about the Adam and Eve book?
Yes.
Oh, that's a different one. That's so that's a book that was released in 1966 by Dr. Chan Thomas, and it's called The Story of Adam and Eve. And that story title sounds cute until you read it and you realize he's talking about really Adam and Eve. And the story is it's this 278-page manuscript that is classified by the CIA, and they've removed 200 pages. There's only like 50 or 60 pages left, and half of those are blank. And the CIA says it's been sanitized. And the reason that the CIA was so interested in the Book of Adam and Eve is because it describes the end of the world. And Dr. Thomas in the book talks about pole shifts and what happens when the poles shift. Something happens to the inner core of the Earth, our electrical field gets thrown off, and when that happens, the poles shift, and it's something that happens over and over and over again. And his pole shift is a 90-degree shift, so Antarctica goes to the equator, and the equator goes down south. Like, it's violent. And as it's shifting, the atmosphere continues to rotate, west to east. So that he describes in the book just walls of water and this wind and debris just tearing across everything. Cities are reduced to waste. He says New York, Boston, Chicago, LA are nothing but memories. New York is at the bottom of the sea. And Antarctica is at the equator and becomes, like a tropical land. And the story is the CIA wanted this suppressed because it would cause chaos and all that. And that was a story that was recommended that I cover, and it was one that I got a lot of people angry at me because I debunked all of it. I debunked the whole thing. That it was never 287 pages or whatever. It was just 50, 60 pages, and it was never classified. What happened was, and they said Chan Thomas was a fake name, but it's not. His name is Dr. Chauncey Powers. Chauncey Powers Thomas. And the book was never classified. What happened was he was an engineer at McDonnell Douglas working on anti-gravity and missile guidance and kind of some weird stuff like that. And his coworkers said he's very intelligent, but he's kind of eccentric. And what I believe happened, because I found the CIA file on him, is they've got the book, but there's also like People magazine, and there's a shopping list, and there's these like random documents. And I think it was just, he's working on this like top secret stuff. He's wacky. They probably had just an officer just keeping an eye on him.
No matter where you're watching Sean Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us